In 10 years, this fantasy kingdom is destined to fall at the hands of 5 legendary disasters, so one man decides to take action. However, he never expected his intervention to escalate quite this quickly. The man is Alan Palacio, a former corporate wage slave who has possessed the body of a minor noble in this new world. With maids pampering his every need, he is more than happy to abandon his old life and live in complete luxury. But his peaceful days are cut short when he is warned that his older brothers are returning home. Hearing the family name, Alan suddenly realizes that he is reincarnated into a brutal role-playing game he used to play. To make matters worse, the Palacio house is a corrupt family doomed to be destroyed before the main storyline even begins. He recalls that 5 future villains are destined to bring about the end of the world, starting with the collapse of his own household. Knowing he will die in 10 years if the timeline proceeds, our boy desperately tries to find a way to survive. He realizes his only hope is to locate the future threats while they are still children and reform them. Although Alan lacks any magical powers or combat abilities, he decides to use his extensive knowledge of the game's future events. By intercepting the children before they turn evil, he hopes to secure a peaceful and lazy life. 2 months later, the young master recruits a loyal knight named Evan to help him establish an orphanage. Alan tries to build rapport with his new bodyguard, but his cold, stoic expression makes his words sound incredibly ominous. In reality, the new lord is simply forcing a smile to hide his panic, as corporate life never prepared him for this level of stress. The knight asks why they went to such lengths to rescue a single orphan, noting the child had an unsettling level of strength. He explains that the child is the future Sin of Wrath, a dangerous monster destined to slaughter thousands in the original timeline. Alan believes that keeping the girl in a safe and peaceful environment will prevent her powers from consuming her. Determined to keep her at a distance, he calmly tells the knight that the time is not yet right to bring her to the estate. He orders the orphanage to be funded heavily and tells his bodyguard to deliver a reassuring letter to the child. As the knight rides off to deliver the message, Alan watches from the window, hoping his plan succeeds. In the game, priests tried to calm the girl using sacred verses, but they failed and triggered a bloodbath. Alan wrote those exact game quotes in his letter, hoping the familiar words would stabilize her chaotic energy. At the orphanage, the future Sin of Wrath, Utia, receives the letter and asks why her savior has left her behind. Utia releases a massive wave of mana that terrifies the knight, who realizes the girl already has the power of a master. Reading the sacred lines, Utia believes the letter is a secret promise from a supreme master and pledges her absolute loyalty. Back in his bedroom, Alan falls asleep happily, believing he has successfully defused the first major threat. But he has no idea that his desperate attempt to survive has just created the world's most fanatical loyalist. While searching the archives for clues on future bosses, Alan is interrupted by his loyal guard. The knight reports that they successfully rescued the second target from the slave market. Their quiet conversation is cut short when Alan's abusive half-brother, Tonio, struts into the library to mock the young noble for wasting his time trying to read. Hoping to avoid a useless conflict with the drug manager, our boy politely excuses himself and backs away to leave the room. But before he can slip away, the eldest brother, Leo, enters the library. The prostitution king immediately threatens Tonio, ordering his rival to get out of his sight. Alan watches the 2 corrupt siblings bicker, well aware that their vicious succession war over the family's drug and prostitution cartels will soon tear the estate apart. While our boy plans to play the role of an incompetent bastard to survive, his loyal knight remains deeply baffled by how a lazy noble obtained such secret underworld intelligence. The guard questions his master's strange orders to send this rescued child to a distant sanctuary, rather than keeping him nearby. Alan knows that in the original game timeline, this boy was destined to become a cataclysmic boss known as the Sin of Sloth, who would destroy entire kingdoms. This child is Deus Macalian. He was abused and passed from master to master as a slave, harboring a deep resentment toward the world. Because of the game's cruel backstory, the boy was destined to repay his suffering by slaughtering the royal families in the most graphic ways imaginable. Hoping to change this dark fate, Alan instructed his knight to treat the boy with absolute kindness and warmth to heal his heart. To ensure the kid is safe, Alan sent a warm letter to Utia at the orphanage. He casually asked her to look after the sick child he sent her way. Upon the young boy's arrival at the sanctuary, Utia immediately notices the deep physical scars and dark, chaotic energy lingering within his broken body. She comforts the frightened child, explaining that the great figure who saved her has chosen him to receive a new purpose in life. The girl promises that if he remains fanatically loyal and follows their benefactor's path, he will eventually get the chance to achieve his absolute revenge. While Yushia begins organizing a secret cult, she happily reads Alan's light-hearted letter, wildly misinterpreting his casual sibling complaints as a profound hidden message. A year passes peacefully, but Evan suddenly bursts into the young master's study with urgent news regarding the family succession struggle. It turns out the second brother, Tonio, has suddenly died from a highly suspicious fall, catching the young noble completely off guard. Attending the funeral, Alan is deeply disgusted to see the family head bringing drugs and women to mourn his own son's passing. In the game story, the eldest brother had openly boasted about committing the murder. However, in this timeline, he simply looks like he got a lucky break. With his rival dead, Leo takes control of the family's drug operations. Meanwhile, a temporary peace settles over the rest of the estate. During this time, our boy continues his regular letters with Yusha, smiling at her peaceful reports about how the orphanage children are growing up happily. Even notes that the small sanctuary is receiving an unusual number of wealthy sponsors, which Alan casually shrugs off as a positive development. The guard then reveals that the local information guild has finally discovered a lead regarding the whereabouts of the third boss. Meanwhile, far from the peaceful mansion, a dark shadow falls over one of the family's major drug distribution warehouses in the city of Margot. Suddenly, the guards find their bodies moving entirely against their will, forcing them to draw their weapons and slaughter their own allies. The young Deus stands calmly amidst the pile of corpses, watching the horrific scene as if it were a simple puppet show. He asks Yucha if destroying their family's illicit drug trade has anything to do with the vengeance they were promised. The girl explains that they must clean up this filthy city. She wants to build a grand empire ready for their master's ultimate return. Together, they establish a secret organization called the Blue Moon, pledging to act as the ultimate sword that executes their master's hidden will. 2 years have passed since Alan first began his long-distance correspondence with the girl at the orphanage. Even returns from his latest mission to report that the final child has been safely delivered to the orphanage. With all 5 future threats now under control, the plan is complete. While feeding his exhausted companion some sweet treats, the young noble reflects on his success. His knowledge of the game allowed him to secure the children before they were broken. With all duties related to the orphanage officially completed, he tells his loyal knight to finally take a rest. Both of them feel a massive sense of relief. As he relaxes on the grass, Alan ponders the dark paths of the 5 children. In the original timeline, their horrific backgrounds would have broken them, transforming them into the world's most dangerous villains. The chances of saving all of them before they suffered those tragic events were incredibly low. He was constantly worried he would arrive too late to make a difference. Even hands over a new progress report regarding the orphanage. The letter details how the children, who initially resembled empty and broken dolls, have finally begun to smile and heal under Yutia's care. Alan is relieved by the good news, remarking that they will not need to hire an outside caretaker. He secretly wonders if Yusha's tragic backstory made her sentimental enough to protect the orphans. The letter reassures him that everyone is growing up well under Yutia's guidance. The young noble realizes just how critical a healthy environment is for keeping the children on a good path. But when his knight asks when they will meet, Alan flatly states he never intends to. Privately, he is still terrified of the Sin's violent game personalities and wants to stay far away. Instead, he focuses entirely on mastering high-tier magic, knowing he needs enough personal strength to protect himself. Fortunately, this body possesses incredible natural talent for the arcane arts. Even mentions a new vigilante group called the Blue Moon that has been hunting down criminal syndicates and corrupt nobles. Terrified that they might target him next, Alan immediately orders his knight to guard his bedroom. Meanwhile, inside a hidden base, the white-haired girl gathers the core members of her secret organization to hear their weekly updates. A young beastkin girl named Sealrang proudly reports that she has executed all the slave traders in the north. She boasts that her victims could not even identify her before they died. Next, a quiet girl named Rin explains that she has cleared out the southern region. She coldly reveals that she melted all of the criminals' remains to leave no trace behind. A silver-haired boy named Raydan reports that he successfully destroyed an illegal testing facility. He proudly details how he turned the Avalon cartel members in the area into minced meat. The group's leader is highly pleased with their progress, reminding them of their sacred purpose. Their secret organization, the Blue Moon, exists solely to carry out the will of their savior. However, the purple-eyed boy, Dales Macallion, steps forward to report a problem. He reveals that they found a dangerous written order while clearing out the syndicate in the south. Deuce explains that the Count's eldest son is plotting to slowly poison Alan after their father dies. Hearing this threat to their master, the leader's eyes flare with cold rage. The letter explicitly dictates a plan to slowly poison the third young master to death, leaving no trace of their involvement. 2 years later, the Count finally passes away. While the public believes he died of natural heart failure, it is clear he was actually poisoned by his own family. At the morning service, Alan's second brother, Tonio, discusses the recent attacks. He notes that the local criminal networks are growing increasingly terrified of the Blue Moon's relentless crusade. Knowing his eldest brother is now in charge and will target him next, Alan begins packing. He commands his shocked knight to prepare their belongings so they can escape the mansion. Alan plans to flee to a quiet rural town in the south called Rodmill there. He hopes to escape the succession war and live out his days in peaceful luxury. But his plans are cut short when he is forced to return to the estate just 3 days later. He arrives to find yet another funeral, this time for his brother. The second brother had been stabbed straight through the heart in the middle of the night. Alan is deeply confused by the sudden shift in the game's timeline. When he tries to ask the mansion guards about what happened, they scream in terror and flee immediately. The staff's bizarre reaction only adds to the young noble's confusion. Even quickly pulls his master aside to whisper the local rumors. He explains that a mysterious faction known as the Blue Moon completely obliterated the Avalon cartel overnight. While traveling to the border, the young noble adamantly refuses his knight's suggestion to visit a bustling city, insisting on heading straight to a quiet villa. His goal was simple: reform 5 future villains to prevent the world's destruction, all while enjoying a peaceful, lazy life. Knowing how lazy his master truly is, the knight remains skeptical of this supposedly deep decision. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Alan's malicious oldest brother watched the carriage depart, debating whether or not to eliminate his sibling. The eldest brother commands his seemingly loyal subordinate to follow the carriage, only for the assassin to ask if he wants the boy dead. Before his brother can even process the strange question, a blade suddenly pierces clean through his chest from behind. The killer pulls his sword free, revealing that he had simply been playing along with the family's schemes this entire time. In truth, he is Haidin, a fanatical member of a secret organization dedicated to serving the young master. He delivers a swift, decisive strike to punish the noble for daring to plot against their lord. As the eldest brother collapses, he is warned that his entire criminal organization will soon vanish from the continent. Far away in his peaceful villa, our guy enjoys 4 days of absolute bliss, eating fresh food and sleeping in. However, his vacation is abruptly cut short when his knight rushes into the room with an urgent message. The letter details the sudden death of the eldest heir, demanding Alan's immediate return to the family estate. Returning to the manor, our boy is greeted by the grim sight of his brother's funeral. In private, his knight turns to him and asks when he managed to become the terrifying leader of the underworld. The knight points out that the timing of the assassination leaves Alan as the sole beneficiary with a perfect alibi. He is convinced that Alan orchestrated the entire downfall of the family's powerful syndicate. Confused by the accusation, the young noble tries to deflect the blame onto a notorious mercenary group known as the Blue Moon. The knight refutes this, explaining that those targets were killed with swords, whereas the legendary group always leaves a specific emblem. Alan is left utterly baffled, knowing from his game memory that the group should be far too weak to pull this off. In reality, the future Sin of Wrath was currently debriefing her allies, with the Beastkin girl happily reporting that they left only dead bodies behind. The Quiet Boy also returns, calmly counting the massive number of enemy forces they had successfully eliminated. Even their silver-haired companion boasts about slicing through the opposition, earning a nod of approval from their petite leader. And just like that, the country's most powerful underground syndicate was completely wiped out in less than a week. The silver-haired youth presents a document he recovered, revealing a deep connection between the destroyed cartel and a prominent noble family. Recognizing the potential threat to their beloved master, the group decides to deal with this new target in absolute secrecy. Deep within their hidden base, the secret leaders of the Blue Moon quietly coordinate their next moves, resolving to eliminate the remaining branches of the fallen family drug cartel. Yuchiya carefully confirms that their shadow operations are completely clean, ensuring that no traces of their unauthorized killings can ever be linked back to the organization. She warns her companions that their beloved master must never catch wind of these operations, as she is terrified of disappointing him and being abandoned. As the group's fanatical leader, she demands absolute devotion from the others, reminding them that they exist solely to serve as the silent blades of the Great Moon. Deuce finds it hard to believe someone as powerful as Yushia could be so anxious. Still, he gladly pledges his life to their benefactor, promising never to disappoint him. Meanwhile, Alan is completely buried under a mountain of paperwork. The sudden deaths of his older brothers forced all the family's administrative duties directly onto him. He desperately begs his staff to slack off and take it easy, hoping to lessen his own workload. However, his exhausted expression only terrifies the servants, who believe he is a cold, demanding tyrant who executes those who fail. His loyal knight, Evan, enters to praise the young lord's talents. He is utterly marveled that Alan achieved second-tier poison mastery in just 2 years of self-study, a feat that usually takes double that time. While the knight remains highly impressed, the reincarnated noble secretly knows the truth. He only practiced self-defense magic out of sheer desperation to survive the chaotic, dangerous timeline of this fantasy world. Unfortunately, he soon realized a tragic bottleneck in his abilities. His natural mana capacity is incredibly small, meaning no amount of training will ever allow him to become a high-level mage. Just as he falls into deep despair, Evan hands over a newly arrived formal letter. It is an invitation to a prominent aristocratic ball in Asteria, prompting the future count to attend in hopes of building peaceful relationships to secure a quiet, lazy retirement. But the moment he steps into the grand hall, the other nobles immediately scatter in absolute dread, terrified by the rumors of his family's sudden deaths. Evan tries to offer comfort, but our hero accepts his fate, realizing the rumors of his family's sudden, bloody demise have completely ruined his chances of socializing. Refusing to give up entirely, Alan decides to deploy the basic socializing skills he secretly studied from books, hoping to make a gentle, welcoming impression. Approaching a nearby noblewoman, the lord attempts to make friendly small talk, politely commenting on the distinctive, high-quality aroma of the regional wine she is holding. Instead of friendly chatter, the terrified woman assumes he is blackmailing her, frantically promising to have her family deliver the rare vintage directly to his estate. Even happily catalogs the massive pile of luxury goods that the other nobles eagerly surrendered, completely misunderstanding his master's polite conversations as hostile extortion. Depressed that his friendly attempts only made him look like a terrifying extortionist, the young lord decides to step onto the balcony to get some fresh air. He hopes to escape the stifling, fearful atmosphere of the ballroom. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious red-haired lady watches his exit from a distance, observing the notorious mastermind with deep curiosity. As he stares out into the quiet night sky to escape the party, a soft voice suddenly breaks his isolation, catching the off-guard noble completely by surprise. A young lady introduces herself as Loria Altia, the third daughter of Duke Altia. Her family is infamous as one of the major shadow players in the region. Alan immediately recognizes the dangerous name from his knowledge of the game, wondering why a member of such a notorious family is approaching him now. Looking visibly distressed, the young lady gets straight to the point, begging the reputedly ruthless Count to lend her his strength to survive her impending assassination. Loria Altia suddenly corners Alan at the noble ball. She desperately begs the young Count to protect her from an impending threat. As the illegitimate daughter of Duke Altia, she lived a protected life under her father. However, the Duke's worsening health has now left her completely vulnerable. She knows that her ambitious older sisters will stop at nothing, and she fears they will assassinate her very soon. Looking at her, Alan quickly realizes she never appeared in the game. He deduces that she must have already been killed in the original timeline, unwilling to get dragged into a deadly noble succession war. Our guy politely declines her desperate plea. He immediately prepares to take his leave. The Count knows he can barely protect himself in this dangerous world, let alone help someone else. He refuses to give her false hope based on false rumors. He must maintain his distance to survive. Although he refuses to get involved, he still feels some sympathy. As he walks away, the young Count silently wishes her luck in finding a strong ally. Meanwhile, Deus and Rin monitor the ballroom from the dark upper balconies. They note that a member of the Altia family has just approached their beloved godfather. The secret organization is already watching the target family. Since this particular sister is not connected to the criminal syndicate, they decide she is safe. However, they resolve to ruthlessly eliminate the rest of her siblings. The command from the leader is absolute. While Alan stands alone in the ballroom, he wonders why everyone is avoiding him. Suddenly, another prominent leader of the underworld approaches with a calm greeting. He instantly recognizes her face from the original game. This is Kalia Zenonia, the brilliant mastermind of a Western syndicate whom he desperately wishes to avoid. Getting involved with her would ruin his peace. The young Count greets the lady with a calm nod. He politely acknowledges that her name is famous throughout the kingdom's shadow circles. In the Asteria kingdom, 3 great shadow players divide the underworld among themselves. They control the north, the east, and the west from the darkness. Knowing that she operates a highly organized and dangerous criminal network, our boy is determined to stay completely away from her affairs. She smiles and asks to speak with him in private. Alan politely excuses himself, claiming that there are far too many watchful eyes in the room. He only wants to escape the conversation. The lady departs with an enigmatic smile, saying she looks forward to their next encounter. Alan is left utterly baffled by her strange reaction. Her cryptic attitude only makes him more nervous. Elsewhere, Rin ensures that all reports concerning their operations remain hidden from their godfather. She wants to shield him from any unnecessary worries. However, a Blue Moon assassin reports that they are being followed by unknown spies. The orders are clear: keep watch and eliminate them silently. Sometime later, Alan and his loyal knight travel to a secluded southern canyon. Attending the noble ball was merely a pretext to search for this location. This is the Labyrinth of Whispers, a legendary dungeon. By solving the ancient riddles within its 8 chambers, a challenger can obtain a powerful artifact. Having memorized all the dungeon routes and puzzle solutions from the game, the Count is confident in his grinding skills. The knight asks how he could possibly know about this hidden structure. Alan quickly deflects the question with a joke and leads the way inside. He warns his companion that any incorrect answers will cause deadly stone blocks to slam down on them mercilessly. The knight marvels at his master's absolute composure. Over their 4 years together, he has failed to understand the logic behind the Count's bizarre charity missions. Nothing the master does seems to follow a pattern. Despite the master's mysterious behavior, the knight follows him with absolute devotion. He knows that every bizarre task somehow leads to a perfect outcome. Our boy is secretly terrified by the brutal traps, but he maintains his calm expression. He is relieved when the heavy stone door finally opens. He completely ignores the surrounding piles of treasure. Instead, he instructs his knight to retrieve a simple black ring from the pedestal. Having finally obtained the Oath of Restraint, the Count is thrilled. He reassures his companion that their escape from the canyon will be entirely safe. He is confident that no danger remains. However, the surrounding stone piles suddenly begin to shift. They transform into giant golems, blocking their path and forcing the Count to step forward. This is the worst-case scenario. Knowing that his standard second circle magic is not enough to defeat these monsters, Alan prepares to invoke the power of his new ring. A massive cosmic voice suddenly echoes through the chamber. The entity demands that he speak 2 restrictions he is willing to place upon himself. Only then will his request be granted. The Oath of Restraint is a unique artifact that allows its user to trade strict casting limitations for a massive boost in magical attack power. For his first restriction, the young count vows to always perform complex hand signs whenever he utilizes his magic to bend the world's laws. The ancient voice grants his first request. The young count then prepares to state the second limitation for his magical contract. He is ready to pay the price. For his second restriction, he promises to strictly chant the ancient words of Babylonia whenever he casts a spell. By choosing both hand signs and spoken words as restrictions, the count ensures his magic will strike with the absolute maximum force possible. The cosmic voice grants the final restriction. It expresses gratitude to the human who inherits the legacy of a forgotten deity as the ring merges. The contract is complete. The knight shouts in panic as the giant golems close in on their position. He is terrified that second-tier magic will fail to stop them. The situation is desperate. Alan pours his entire mana pool into a sphere of lightning, but the result looks incredibly small and pitiful. This is the absolute limit of his capacity. He cannot generate more power. However, with his newly established restrictions active, the ring remains visible on his thumb. It is finally time to test this restricted magic against the golems. The power is about to explode. To destroy the golem army, Alan prepares to cast his spell, knowing the restrictions he placed on himself will make it incredibly powerful. He begins chanting the rapid incantations, gathering a massive storm of blue lightning in his hands. With a deafening roar, the electric surge erupts, completely blinding the shocked knight. The massive energy obliterates the entire horde of golem soldiers in a single flash. As the smoke clears, nothing is left of the ancient guardians but scattered debris. Even is left speechless, demanding to know if his master has been hiding this monstrous strength all along. Alan insists it was just a second circle spell, but the veteran mercenary refuses to believe such a basic technique could do this. Privately, our guy is just as surprised, recalling that in the original game, magic could be boosted by stacking hand signs and incantations over multiple turns. By using the maximum configuration for a large-scale lightning spell, he achieved a massive power boost. However, because of the Oath of Restraint forcing him to chant every time, the spell's destructive force was multiplied beyond recognition. The two finally emerge from the dungeon, with the exhausted knight cursing whoever designed such an unpleasant place. Alan remembers from the online guides that the dungeon was built by someone named Palinon, casually mentioning the name aloud. He quickly changes the subject, telling Evan they should head home after 3 weeks of hard work. As they travel, the hero notes that the spell physically transformed with his chants, a detail that never happened in the game. He plans to experiment further once his mana recovers, relieved that his first real excursion ended in success. Meanwhile, under the cover of night, Rin arrives at ancient ruins to investigate the region's history. Reading the glowing blue glyphs on a stone monument, she deciphers records from a lost empire. The text praises a legendary emperor named Paleon the Great, who once saved his people from a dark invasion. She connects these writings to Alan's earlier mutterings about the maze's creator, realizing his knowledge stretches back to ancient times. The fact that he knows secrets missing from the grandest libraries leaves her wondering about his true identity. Deuce suddenly appears, prompting Rin to ask if he successfully gathered information from their target. The young warrior reports that the captive died mysteriously when his head twisted midair, forcing them to clean up the scene. Back at Zenonia County, Kalia Zenonia remembers her brief meeting with the young count, recalling his cold and terrifying eyes. She is deeply unsettled by how easily he recognized her, even though she operates entirely in the shadows. Kalia addresses her father, who sits at his desk, acting as a mere figurehead for her operations. She wonders how Alan discovered her secret role as the true family head, and fears he has noticed her spies. A panicked guard interrupts to warn her of a horrifying discovery inside her personal bedchamber. She finds the corpse of her own spy dumped on the floor, realizing Alan has sent her a silent, terrifying warning. Oblivious to the terror he has inspired, our boy is simply relaxing, reading basic tips on how to bypass dungeon monsters. Loria Altia slowly returns to her family estate, trembling in silence as she prepares to face the immediate consequences of her actions. She realizes the young count is not someone to be taken lightly, possessing cold eyes that warn her never to make an enemy of him. With her competitive brothers and sisters stripping away all her assets and power, she feels she has absolutely nothing left to bargain with. But before she can spiral into despair, a servant rushes in with shocking news, announcing that her siblings Keegan and Perrin have committed suicide. Stunned by the report, she walks inside only to discover that her remaining siblings, Tamalian and Marianne, have also stabbed each other to death. Remembering the mastermind's casual promise that good things would happen, she immediately connects the dots and realizes he orchestrated this bloody cleanup. As the sole surviving heir to the Altia Duchy, she is completely overwhelmed by the terrifying foresight and power of the noble mastermind. Believing she has signed a contract with the devil, She accepts that there is no turning back from the path she has chosen. 2 months later, a messenger arrives at the Palacio estate to deliver a rare bottle of Cernance wine worth thousands of gold. Alan is completely baffled by the expensive gift of gratitude, since his conscience was stinging from refusing to help her in the first place. His confusion only grows when the messenger casually confirms that the youngest daughter has officially succeeded her father as the new duke. Back in her new office, the young Duchess Altia stretches and reflects on how quickly she secured the succession ceremony without drawing any suspicion. She believes the Count calculated this outcome perfectly, orchestrating the deaths behind the scenes because he needs her family's name for his plans. Since the young Count operates primarily in the underworld, she decides her role is to manipulate the political stage from the shadows for him. She resolves to focus on her new duties, waiting for the distinguished mastermind to contact her with his next set of instructions. Unbeknownst to her, the mastermind is currently sweating in his office, utterly shocked to learn that she somehow became the new duke. A few months pass, bringing the timeline to 5 years before the games start, and Evan enters to discuss their current status. Although his dream of a lazy life in Rodmill has been thoroughly ruined, our boy has slowly adjusted to his role as Count. Evan hands him the latest letter from the orphanage while reporting that their search for Leo's assassins has still yielded no results. Knowing the original story has drifted due to his presence, the Count resolves to stay prepared for any unexpected anomalies. Reading Yushia's monthly update, his heart is warmed as he learns the children are growing up well and focusing on their hobbies. Realizing the kids are now old enough to enter society, he decides it is finally time to let them leave the orphanage. The kids have sent a collective letter of gratitude, and he believes dispersing them is the best way to secure their futures. Since he raised them with care to prevent their corruption, he is confident they will not awaken as the legendary 5 sins. By guiding their immense talents in fighting, magic, and politics into proper careers, he hopes they will all lead peaceful, successful lives. The Count finishes preparing custom gifts and letters for each child, sending Evan to deliver the packages across the continent. At the orphanage, Yushia and the other children receive their individual packages with deep reverence, excited to see what he sent. A young appraiser holds her gift close, finding a special book that will guide her toward a future of gathering rare knowledge. At the headquarters of the Blue Moon, Utia reveals that their godfather has sent them individual deployment orders. To understand their next moves, Utia explains they must review past letters, which contained crucial instructions hidden within casual daily small talk. While the others only see simple greetings, Utia points out the hidden directives designating target eliminations and establishing their secret network. Deuce recognizes the need for such precautions to prevent information leaks, though Raiden wonders why they rely on letters rather than magical communication. Yushia firmly silences their doubts, reminding them that their sole duty is to obey the instructions left for them by their savior. Reading the new letters, Deus is sent to the Night Nation of Caliburn, while Cielrang is dispatched to the desert sands of Colony. Raiden is ordered to Raxus, Rin is sent to Larthania, and Yushia heads for the Holy Kingdom, all supported by their godfather's ongoing patronage. Yuchia issues a final warning to keep the existence of their organization secret, ensuring they operate completely in the shadows. 3 months later at the Palacio estate, Alan struggles to understand his modified spells while checking the progress on his brother's murder investigation. He realizes his actions saving the future sins have altered history, especially since Loria Altia has already expanded her influence in the underworld. With the guild finding no leads, Alan decides to halt the investigation, assuming the mysterious assassins will leave him alone if he does not interfere. Confident that staying uninvolved is his best course of action, Alan instructs Evan to officially call off the search. Evan then shares a new report, revealing that the young boy Alan rescued was recently appointed as a knight in Caliburn. Alan is pleased, but Evan adds that the child has already established his own military force and is on the path to greatness. Another year passes and Evan returns with the staggering news that the boy has officially become Caliburn's youngest master knight. Alan is shocked by the news, knowing that a sword master of this level possesses superhuman abilities that normally take decades to develop. The kid achieved this status after defeating the country's 4th sword, a feat that is practically unheard of for someone so young. Since the legendary Reinhardt took over 20 years to reach this level, Alan is amazed that a child could progress this fast. Alan hopes he can rely on the boy's incredible power soon, but he sighs at the fact that Utia is the only one who writes to him. He feels slightly neglected but reassures himself that as long as the children are safe and not causing trouble, he is happy. Meanwhile, in Kirtham, the capital of Caliburn, the Solar Eclipse Knights are busy training under their young leader's command. Standing in his mansion, the captain of the order looks out the window as his younger sister comes to greet him. Looking at his sister, Deus reflects on the tragedy that took everything from him, leaving him filled with pure hatred. He had only joined the Blue Moon for the chance to get revenge, enduring years of brutal training to build his strength. He spent years carrying out dangerous missions, until one day he received a personal message from the Great Moon. The letter directed him to a small local hotel, where he was stunned to find his presumed dead sister waiting for him. Realizing their benefactor had saved his only family, Deus sheds tears of gratitude, pledging his absolute loyalty to his savior. Reuniting with his younger sister Siley, whom he had long believed to be dead, Deus Michaelian holds her tight. Overwhelmed by pure relief, the cold knight cannot hold back his tears in her presence. As they sit down together, she begins to recount the dark journey she endured after they were separated. She explains how she was dragged off into the darkness, completely helpless and alone. Trapped in a grim prison, she spent years waiting in fear for her turn to be killed. But a mysterious savior in a dark cloak appeared just as her execution drew near. The knight's loyal companion, Evan, had tracked down the slave trade ring and broken her out. Drawing his sword, the mercenary carried her away from the ruins of the black market. Following her rescue, she was provided with shelter and expensive medicines to cure her ailments. Everything was funded by a secret benefactor who left a reassuring letter under the Palacio family name. Reading the Count's handwriting, Deos realizes the profound foresight his lord possessed. He breaks down again, deeply moved that Alan had saved his family without ever asking for thanks. He remembers Utia's absolute devotion, realizing she was never just blindly following the Count. Alan's past words of reassurance now make perfect sense to the young knight. Knowing his family is safe, the boy's determination burns brighter than ever before. Gently patting her head, he vows to become the strongest shield for their savior. He accepts his sister's care, silently swearing to repay this immense debt at all costs. Deuce prepares to lead his men, seeing this expedition as his first step toward glory. The solar eclipse knights assemble, ready to follow their captain into the northern wastes. Standing high above them, Deus watches his forces prepare for the upcoming barbarian subjugation. Gripping his glowing purple blade, the Master Knight pledges his sword to the moon. The Night Order begins its march into the freezing, snow-covered mountains. Meanwhile, Alan enjoys a peaceful day at the estate, completely oblivious to Deus's crusade. But a sudden gust of wind scatters his magical research notes across the courtyard. He gathers the sheets, continuing his study on the ancient phrases he discovered in the labyrinth. Alan attempts to decipher the long-forgotten rules of Babylonia to strengthen his defensive spells. He begins channeling mana, trying to alter a low-level electrical spell's behavior. He analyzes how refracting a completed spell can broaden its area of effect. Adding diffraction should theoretically allow the electrical sparks to penetrate defense barriers. However, repeating a phrase or choosing the wrong chant order will cause the spell to fail. After 2 long months of research, Alan is ready to put his theories to the test. He begins the sequence, forming the precise hand signs to shape the raw mana. Unleashing the magic, he chants the forgotten key phrases in the correct order. The electrical sphere crackles and expands, firing a violent bolt of energy into the sky. A massive explosion of light and ice-blue lightning completely devours the testing ground. He names his modified technique Fleeting Bloom, watching the towering pillar of energy fade away. The sheer output of the spell leaves a lingering blue glow in the courtyard. Alan stares at his hands in shock, surprised that a simple experiment yielded such raw power. But his blood runs cold when he notices Count Zenonia and the local tower master staring at him. They look completely horrified, convinced they have just witnessed legendary origin magic. Kalia Zenonia decides to pay a visit to the Palatial Mansion reception room. She hopes to personally inspect the new Count and uncover the true strength of his shadow organization. However, her initial expectations are instantly shattered when she looks at her companion. To her utter shock, the powerful mage beside her is visibly trembling with fear. Viankel is an incredibly dangerous fifth circle mage who can easily wipe out divisions, yet he is now paralyzed by dread. Totally unaware of the silent panic unfolding right in front of him, Alan sits down calmly. He politely asks the red-haired noblewoman what business brought her here. The flustered noblewoman quickly stammers an apology for her sudden visit. The Count simply tells her that he will not blame her, waving the concern away. He then clarifies that his recent magical display was not a legendary origin spell. Instead, he claims his skills are limited to the basic second circle. Alan explains that the weak spell has absolutely no use in either offense or defense. He then firmly advises them to keep quiet about what they saw. The terrified mage quickly agrees with him, nodding politely in deep respect. Seeing this, Alan relaxes internally, glad they resolved the misunderstanding so easily. Kalia realizes she has no chance of probing further and decides to leave. Alan mentions he has work to do, giving them a polite excuse to exit. Before they walk out, the Count suggests that Kalia should visit Duchess Altia instead. He casually remarks that the two of them would likely get along very well. In reality, Alan is just desperate to keep these dangerous underworld masterminds far away from him. He hopes they will distract each other and leave him in peace. Once they are safely in their carriage, Kalia asks Viankel for his honest opinion. She wants to know if the Count was truly using a simple spell. The old mage explains that while ordinary origin magic works within existing rules, Alan did something far worse. He literally tore the canvas of reality to twist those unchanging laws. Remembering the terrifying force behind the Count's magic, Viankel clutches his head in agony. He desperately forces himself to stop thinking before the realization breaks his mind. As a seasoned researcher of forbidden ancient arts, Viankel understands the danger. He turns to Kalia and delivers a stark warning to never oppose Count Palacio. Hearing this warning, Kalia Zenonia feels a chill run down her spine. She realizes that she has already become a mere pawn in the Count's grand design. 5 months pass quietly at the estate. Alan sits at his desk and asks Evan if there is any new information regarding his adopted children. However, Evan brings shocking news that the Zenonia and Altia factions have formed a massive alliance. This revelation immediately throws Alan into a silent, sweating panic. Alan tries to calm himself, hoping this dangerous underworld union is only temporary. Still, he knows he needs to make some preparations just in case. To prevent any hostility, he drafts a polite letter to apologize for his cold attitude. He hands it to Evan to send through the mercenaries. He then shifts his thoughts to his other wards, wondering how they are faring. He hopes the young Wolfkin girl has safely reached her destination. Alan had left her instructions to find the legendary essence of the Golden Mane tribe. He hoped the powerful artifact would keep her safe from corruption. Meanwhile, the scene shifts far to the south, to the harsh desert colony. In this brutal land, raw strength is the only law that matters. Deep within a glowing cavern, the young Wolfkin catches her breath after finishing her grueling trials. She looks up with joy and thanks the great moon. Holding the golden relic, she laughs happily. She realizes that the legends her elders told her as a child were completely true. This legendary relic grants her immense power and authority, proving her status as a true descendant of the ancient kings of all beastkin. She remembers the day the great moon saved her from the horrors of the laboratory. Driven by gratitude, she vows to devote her entire life to him. Knowing her savior expects greatness, she refuses to remain a mediocre fighter. She resolves to train constantly and become the strongest gladiator in the land. Her new goal is to reunite her scattered people and restore their pride. Armed with the golden gauntlet, she prepares to slay the legendary Black Dragon. Determined to give everything to her savior, the Beastkin begins her crusade. Under the light of the blue moon, the Golden Mane clan shall rise once more. Even informs his master that their intelligence guild has finally gathered updates on the children they rescued, though he admits he forgot to bring it up earlier at the training grounds. He reports that Seorang has been performing exceptionally well in the gladiatorial arena, earning a fearsome reputation and the legendary alias of the Golden Flash. Alan then asks about the boy Radin, only to learn that the guild is still in the middle of verifying the integrity of his location data. Alan suddenly announces that they need to prepare for a month-long journey, revealing their destination is the Blue Magic Tower located deep in the outskirts of Labyrinth City. The journey is exhausting to contemplate, but the protagonist recalls Labyrinth City from his gaming days as a prime location filled with endless opportunities. The Labyrinth is a notorious dungeon where players once spent countless hours grinding, descending deeper to retrieve increasingly powerful relics and artifacts. Because of the constant supply of valuable treasure from the depths, the profession of magic appraiser has become highly lucrative and respected in the region. Alan recalls that Rin is preparing for her upcoming appraiser exam, though he worries that the simple artifact he gifted her might have been too small compared to the others. Meanwhile, in Larthania, Rin operates a highly exclusive appraisal shop named Murd, which has quietly gained massive fame by catering to wealthy nobles and top-tier adventurers. Today, the Lord of Larthania pays a personal visit to the shop, watchfully waiting as the young appraiser evaluates a device designed to ignite flames with mana. She reveals that the relic can be imprinted, drastically improving its efficiency so that it only requires a minimal amount of mana to burn for a full hour. The secret behind her shop's unmatched reputation is the legendary imprinting artifact gifted to her by her godfather, whom she and the others worship as the Great Moon. Although she initially failed to connect this business to his grand designs, she believes his true identity is linked to an ancient emperor from a forgotten age. Seeing the power of his gift made her realize that becoming an appraiser was a strategic move, allowing her to gather the strength required to defeat the dark entities. The artifact is the Eye of the Stalker, allowing her to rapidly identify and analyze any items that fall below a certain mana threshold. However, its true potential is locked, possessing a strange structure that cannot be found in any of the tower's magic library records. To break the ancient seals and fully awaken the artifact's true power, Rin needs to perform hundreds of successful appraisals, using specific high-tier relics as sacrifices. This delicate task requires perfect accuracy, as selecting the wrong item for the sacrifice will cause her entire stack of accumulated progress to vanish in an instant. Rin is determined to master the artifact, resolving to eliminate their dark adversaries in perfect accordance with the grand designs of the godfather she serves. 3 weeks later, Alan's carriage arrives at the Blue Magic Tower, where he is met by the arrogant vice master, a blue-haired mage named Finia Kryzine. Alan immediately recognizes her from the game as a once-in-a-lifetime prodigy, destined to master the 8th circle and lead the entire tower at a young age. Despite her dismissive attitude, the Count introduces himself and explains that he has come to address the crisis surrounding the unstable time gate. The spatial rifts are known to cause severe damage. However, the Vice Master immediately mocks Alan's weak mana pool, questioning what someone with such low talent could possibly achieve. She assumes he is simply trying to pull off a reckless stunt to salvage his reputation, which has been plagued by rumors of his sudden inheritance. Finia brings up the rumors circulating in the outside world, claiming he only inherited his family title by luck when all of his siblings died. Alan is surprised by her sharp intelligence network, while Evan stands behind him, visibly trembling at the sheer density of the mage's magical aura. Desperate to secure the artifact inside the rift, Alan offers a massive wager, promising to forfeit his entire estate to the magic tower if he fails. Intrigued by the sudden bet and willing to take an oath, Phinia agrees to guide him directly to the chamber containing the active time gate. As they walk, Phinia continues to evaluate him, concluding that his small mana capacity and minor energy sensing talent make him look pathetic compared to his grand reputation. She believes the rift will naturally close after releasing its relic, but the anomaly has actually troubled the magic tower for over 2 years. Standing before the spatial tier, Alan raises his hand to cast, bypassing the need for a staff by using a primal casting method from ancient fairy tales. But the moment Alan begins, a strange, overwhelming force fills the room, freezing the Vice Master completely in her tracks as everything stops moving. Watching the massive temporal distortion freeze before her eyes, the Vice Tower Master is completely paralyzed by the sight. Her body refuses to move under the sheer weight of his presence, while a mysterious system notification registers the sudden activation of a legendary visual technique. This magic allows the user to see straight through the flow of raw mana, revealing the hidden structural flaws in the chaotic anomaly. To our hero, resolving this dangerous dimensional rift is actually a remarkably simple task, but to the terrified observer, the massive red eye looming overhead feels like an absolute death sentence that she must not try to understand. She immediately interprets his calm posture as a silent warning to keep quiet, trembling in fear at the raw display of power. With a brilliant flash of blue light, the ancient portal is completely sealed away, and the surrounding environment returns to normal. The young noble casually turns around and declares that the mission is officially complete. He plans to keep the dimensional relic bracelet for himself, quietly hoping his elaborate performance was enough to keep the Vice Master fooled. Instead of questioning him, she frantically bows and promises never to speak a single word about his power. Before he can even attempt to explain the situation, the young wizard desperately begs him to believe that she can keep a secret. Her sudden display of extreme submission leaves the Count completely baffled and questioning her sanity. As he prepares to make a quick exit from the chamber, she frantically stops him to present a highly valuable offering. She hands over a pristine collection of top-tier mana potions that she personally brewed, hoping to appease the terrifying noble. The sheer monetary value of these rare elixirs is enough to purchase a luxurious mansion in the capital. While our guy is internally stressed by the insane price of the gift, she continues to grovel for his mercy. The panicked girl even suggests locking their silence with a binding oath of mana, leaving the Count struggling to process her dramatic reaction. Realizing there is absolutely no way to clear up this massive misunderstanding, he simply decides to go along with it. Once back in the safety of their carriage, the loyal knight examines the crude and basic design of the newly acquired relic. Though the item looks crude, it has the unique ability to absorb and store environmental mana within its embedded gems. Unfortunately, our boy's natural reserves are so incredibly low that he feels exhausted almost immediately after testing the device. He reassures himself that this tool is meant for research and survival, rather than actual combat. Meanwhile, the Vice Master bows respectfully outside the gates as their carriage finally departs from the tower grounds. Even when our guy tries to clarify that he only possesses second circle magic, she agrees with absolute reverence, thinking it is just another deep bluff. He notes that her strange behavior is exactly like the reaction he got from Kalia Zenonia during their last meeting. Since he expects to never see either of them again, he decides it is best to just forget about the whole ordeal. The carriage rolls along the peaceful countryside path under the bright sky, heading back toward the estate. The knight agrees that their journey home is proving to be exceptionally peaceful and pleasant. Far away at the Altia estate, the new Duchess welcomes her powerful ally for a highly anticipated private meeting. Kalia admits she is deeply impressed by the incredible foresight shown by their supreme leader in arranging their connection. By simply telling her to visit the Duchess, the Count had subtly guided them into forming a powerful coalition. Since they both serve the same absolute master, there is no need for them to fight for power. This mutual devotion has turned their former rivalry into a highly cooperative relationship, unifying their houses under his name. The Duchess asks about the reason for her sudden visit, prompting Kalia to produce a letter sent by the Count. Though the letter reads like a simple apology about noble complaints, she is convinced it contains hidden instructions. Looking closely at the paper, the Duchess immediately begins to analyze the hidden message behind his casual words. The letter mentions that he lacks noble friends, specifically listing prominent figures from opposing political factions who spoke to him at the ball. The two women shock themselves by concluding that the Count wants those political rivals completely eliminated to clear his path. They assume the Count wants to push out the existing nobility and establish a brand new regime in the kingdom. The Duchess believes this is the exact reason why she was supported in claiming her title, as she holds the necessary prestige. With their goals aligned, they immediately begin plotting a massive underworld takeover in his name. Back at the Magic Tower, the Grand Master is shocked to hear about the closed anomaly. The Vice Master details the Count's power, leaving the leader deeply concerned about the noble's command over forbidden arts. She remains completely terrified of the ancient spells he wielded, promising to keep his secret. Meanwhile, the supposed master of the underworld is busy choking on a roasted sweet potato by his campfire. As he rests, our boy sighs deeply and wishes he could just return to his peaceful home. Little does he know, His natural talents have already secured his reputation as an legendary high-circle mage. Salim Micardo, the Blue Magic Tower Master, finally returns from his long business trip and is surprised to find that the unstable time anomaly has completely vanished. Instead of her usual arrogance, his disciple Fenia greets him with uncharacteristic submission, leaving the master deeply confused about what happened in his absence. Normally, Fenia's pride was unmatched due to her status as a young magical prodigy, frequently leaving rookie mages in tears with her harsh attitude. The Tower Master had planned to let her naturally learn humility once she reached the 7th circle, making this sudden shift even more baffling. He asks if she was simply overwhelmed with work, but she remains visibly tense and nervous under his gaze. When she reveals that the local count closed the gate but cannot explain how due to a magical oath, the master realizes she witnessed something incomprehensible. He deduces that the young noble must have unleashed ancient origin magic, leaving his arrogant apprentice so terrified that she won't even swat his hand away. The powerful master finds himself deeply intrigued by this supposedly weak count. 1 month later, Alan continues his research on magical phrases, enjoying his increased capacity to cast spells. He documents a new rule, realizing that using similar phrases in his incantations can create a powerful overlapping effect. His loyal knight Evan notices that the Count's power seems to grow stronger with every single demonstration. Even points out a massive crater created by a simple second circle gravity spell, a level of destructive force that should normally be impossible. Alan internally notes that this sudden surge in firepower cannot be explained by his increased proficiency or the phrase arrangements alone. His research charts prove that optimizing the phrase alignment should only yield gradual, incremental increases in power. Evan cuts his thoughts short by delivering a newly arrived letter from Utia. Having exhausted his daily limit of 3 spells, Alan decides to return to his study to read the letter. He continues to ponder the anomaly, wondering if his enhanced magic might be some kind of curse. However, system information details that curses require Eastern rituals, meaning there is no one nearby who could have cast one on him. He then considers the possibility of receiving faith, but quickly dismisses the idea as completely illogical for a minor count. Deciding that nothing bad will come of it, he resolves to simply forget the matter and move on. Meanwhile, in the pure white city of Rionel, citizens gather to worship the goddess of moon and peace. In the East Prayer House, a young paladin approaches Yuxia, who is currently operating in disguise as a simple nun. Despite her low rank and lack of holy vestments, the paladin treats her with immense respect. The paladin reports that they successfully saved dozens of lives during their recent mission, attributing the victory entirely to her guidance. He expresses his deepest gratitude to her for teaching an ignorant man like himself. For 20 years, he had lived in deep despair because he was unable to feel any trace of divine power. Just as he was about to give up, the disguised sister had instructed him to put his faith in the moon instead. She had assured him that the path forward would manifest once he took action. After praying to the moon for a few days, he miraculously learned to wield divine power, bringing him immense joy despite his fear of heresy. Even the holy weapons bestowed in the name of the goddess shone brightly in his hands, validating his new power. When Locke asks why she directed him to the moon, Yuxia explains that it is always easier to draw power from what actually exists. The paladin concludes that the goddess and the moon must be one and the same, allowing him to believe with absolute certainty. As he bows in deep gratitude, a subtle, knowing smile plays across Utia's face. She invites him to join the congregation for the upcoming prayer service. A large crowd of devotees has already gathered inside the hall, preparing for the ritual. Stepping up to the altar, the sister prepares to lead the massive assembly. She raises her voice, calling for everyone to begin their worship. She directs their devotion not to the goddess, but to the great moon, expanding her secret cult under the very nose of the Holy Kingdom. Back at the estate, Evan collects the daily mail, including a flyer advertising the services of the Mercenary Guild. Alan sifts through the latest letters from the orphanage, finding nothing but mundane updates about the children's daily lives. While he is glad everyone seems to be safe and healthy, a part of him feels a bit distant from their lives. Still, his main goal was simply to keep them from growing up to destroy the world, so he tries to find inner peace. He reassures himself that he is completely fine, even if only one of them regularly writes back. His quiet moment is interrupted when Evan suddenly walks in, holding a fresh report from the Intelligence Guild. The knight is eager to share the latest updates on the children, starting with the young boy named Raydan. To Alan's absolute horror, Evan calmly reveals that the boy has become a pirate. Our guy is completely stunned, unable to comprehend how a simple treasure hunt recommendation led to this. Before Alan can process the shock, Evan moves on to the massive rumors surrounding Seolrang and Deus. In the desert colony, Seolrang has already secured 32 consecutive victories in the arena to claim her legendary status. She is rapidly approaching the record of the strongest warrior in the colony, a feat that leaves Alan sweating. Meanwhile, Deus's Knight Order has successfully eliminated a powerful barbarian chief of the northern snowfields. Alan recalls the dangerous northern trials from the game, relieved that he won't have to face their god himself. Evan proudly reports that Deus's martial achievements have now elevated him to the level of the kingdom's top swordsman. As for the young girl Rin, She has successfully opened her own appraisal shop and is enhancing artifacts with special engravings, while the others are thriving as heroic figures. Alan is still hung up on the pirate news and demands more details. Even explains that in the lawless seas off the coast, the young boy has conquered the largest archipelago to become its captain. This revelation completely crushes our hero, who had spent years sending money to ensure the boy lived a normal life. Because the kid was a rare sea godkin, Alan had specifically recommended he become a treasure hunter for a promising future. Even points out that becoming a captain means he is now the absolute lord of the territory, making him highly influential. To defeat the superhuman captains, the boy must have systematically targeted the ancient ruins to obtain powerful relics. But the thought of having a notorious pirate for a son leaves the Count feeling incredibly bitter. Meanwhile, far across the water, the sprawling pirate haven of Raxus rests under the shadow of its new ruler. Having defeated the infamous former captain, Redan now stands at the peak of the islands, though he remains deeply conflicted. Looking out over his new domain, he contemplates the mysterious mastermind behind his destiny. He remembers the dark days when he was destined to die as a slave, before a miraculous intervention saved him. Thanks to the Shadow Organization, he awakened his true powers and began working under the orders of the Great Moon. Yet he could not understand why he was ordered to live quietly as a simple treasure hunter. Revenge was the only thing on his mind, driven by the memory of the tragedy that destroyed his clan. Rogue hunters had brutally slaughtered his parents on the mainland, selling him off to the highest bidder. He did not believe that treasure hunting could ever help him achieve his promise of absolute vengeance. His thoughts are interrupted by the loud celebration of the pirates, who toast to their new captain's supreme authority. But the celebration only reminds him of how he tracked down the exact hunters who murdered his parents. Those monsters had butchered his family to harvest their sea godkin blood and claim the power of the sea god. Having finally exacted his revenge, he realizes that the path Alan laid out was a perfect guide to his destiny. Looking out at the open sea, Raiden wonders how his savior could have known his deepest secrets, especially since he had never spoken about his past. It seemed the great mastermind had intentionally arranged a perfect opportunity for revenge, even though his targets were formidable superhumans who wielded the sea god's power. If everything had been carefully arranged by his lord, then this mystical gift had to serve a grand purpose. He realized the artifact was meant to lay the exact groundwork for his future retribution, allowing him to take absolute control. Diving deep into the cold ocean waters, the young pirate set out to locate the hidden treasures that would grant him the power he desperately needed. Using the spectacles of Amrita, he scanned the dark seabed to locate ancient relics. The valuable treasures he successfully retrieved were more than enough to make up for his current lack of raw combat force. Standing back on the shoreline under the full moon, he realized his savior had fully delivered on the promise to grant him the strength for his crusade. The true intent of his lord's letter was finally clear to him. He was expected to complete his revenge and seize absolute control over the 7 archipelagos. Words that once meant nothing to him were now deeply engraved in his heart as a light of absolute trust. 3 months later, the cooling autumn weather brought the biennial grand social gathering of Asteria. Naturally, our protagonist was forced to participate against his own lazy desires. On the road, their carriage joined up with other noble houses. Traveling together in a large caravan was a common custom to ward off potential bandit attacks. But as the sun went down and they stopped for the evening, the Count quickly realized that the snobbish nobles would be a far greater nuisance than any bandits. Arrogant representatives from the other houses openly mocked his single escort. They laughed at his plain carriage and loudly assumed his noble finances were in complete ruins. In truth, our boy had simply abandoned the dangerous underworld drug businesses to live a quiet, comfortable life, leaving a massive power vacuum in the Eastern Territory. Because of this vacuum, everyone assumed his sudden rise to Count was pure luck, leading the obnoxious aristocrats to hurl insults directly to his face. The noble houses of Krild and Edorn had once served as mere errand boys for his family, and they were eager to vent their past humiliation. Despite their spiteful mockery, he decided to completely ignore them, treating their childish behavior like annoying, toxic comments from bitter online haters. His loyal knight soon returned from the inn's kitchen carrying a warm bowl of freshly roasted corn. This simple, comforting snack was a true blessing for the two men on such a chilly evening, far better than any noble banquet. As they quietly enjoyed their meal, the nobles continued their relentless insults, sounding more like amateur rappers trying to deliver a passionate diss track to an audience. With their bellies full, the long travel day finally came to a peaceful end. Meanwhile, far to the north lay the frozen snowfields of Caliburn. This was a cursed land of endless winter where only death and danger seemed to thrive. On the frozen ground, a dying barbarian chief named Klekan cursed the treacherous knights of Caliburn for their complete lack of honor and warrior spirit. For his people, a glorious death in combat was the ultimate honor. Instead, he had been cowardly poisoned by a knight who had proposed a fair duel. Collapsing into the deep snow, the dying chief called out to the wind, desperately wondering about the fate of his fallen shield brother. Bleeding out among broken swords, he lamented his shameful fate, unable to even close his eyes in peace as death slowly approached him. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed from the sky, urging the dying warrior to call upon the name of the great deity he worshipped. With his final breaths, the chief called out to Ultorus, prompting the massive, terrifying god of duels to manifest in the freezing storm. As the carriage makes its long journey to the upcoming social gathering, the arrogant nobles continue their endless mockery of our boy, who completely ignores their childish insults. Since he refuses to fall for their obvious baits, the frustrated lords are left completely defeated in this battle of silence. Under the cover of night, the plotting nobles plan to move in on the underworld, convinced that the young head only brought a single knight as his escort. They eagerly celebrate the massive wealth and power that will soon be theirs. Meanwhile, dangerous mutated beasts are quietly surrounding the camp, preparing to tear the sleeping travelers to pieces. Suddenly, a sentry notices the threat and screams in terror as a massive horde of monsters launches an ambush. The outer guards are instantly slaughtered before they can even draw their swords. The caravan mages quickly cast bright illumination spells into the night sky, desperately trying to secure their vision. However, the glowing light only reveals a nightmare. They initially expect to see ordinary goblins. However, the beasts emerging from the dark woods are far larger and more ferocious than any normal variant. Goblins are normally weak monsters that can be found in any forest. However, these mutated giants possess massive physical power and effortlessly slaughter the armored guards. The remaining defenders panic as the savage beasts overrun the camp. They charge past the barricades, heading straight for the terrified nobles. A guard screams that everyone keeping watch on the outside is already dead, throwing the camp into absolute chaos. They realize these mutated monsters actually possess active mana, making their physical attacks far deadlier than anything the knights have ever faced. Just as a goblin is about to crush a defenseless noble, massive stone walls and shimmering magical shields suddenly rise. The powerful defensive spells block the attack instantly. While the camp mages desperately look around to find the master wizard who saved them, the young count calmly prepares to cast his own magic. Invoking the rules of his restricted system, he releases a concentrated blast of pure magical energy. The beam tears directly through the forest toward the monsters. The spell explodes with violent force, creating a massive shockwave that shreds the surrounding trees. The sheer power of the blast leaves the nobles in complete disbelief. Before the surviving beasts can recover, our boy activates a powerful vacuum spell. A massive vortex of wind drags the scattered monsters into a single point. With a final cold command, he returns the gathered horde to their origins. The spell crushes them in a brilliant flash of light that completely disintegrates the monsters. Even immediately rallies the surviving troops, ordering them to snap out of their daze. They quickly move to clean up the remaining monsters on the battlefield. The inspired guards charge forward, easily cutting down the last of the mutated creatures as the chaotic battle finally comes to an end. As dawn slowly breaks, the hiding nobles creep out from behind the trees. They stare in absolute shock at the absolute ruin of their camp. They look toward the silent figure of the count standing over the corpses, realizing he was the one who effortlessly destroyed the entire horde. The noble who had mocked our boy earlier is now sweating in pure terror, realizing he has been insulting a monster this entire time. He trembles in silence, desperately wondering what kind of powerful mastermind is truly hiding behind that calm, lazy face. But in reality, Count Palacio is internally screaming in panic. He realized his tiny mana pool ran dry halfway through the battle, leaving him completely defenseless. Our boy tries to act cool and assures his knight that he is fine, but the terrifying experience of running out of mana leaves him deeply shaken. He is glad he decided to travel in a large group, but his attention is quickly drawn to a strange purple amethyst dropped by the beasts. This crystal is proof of a divine descent, a strange phenomenon that occurs when an outer god is preparing to descend. It drastically increases a monster's strength. This event is happening years ahead of schedule. The outer gods are descending early, meaning the world's destruction is coming much faster than the original timeline. Knowing he will die if the world collapses prematurely, the young count resolves to gather information the moment they reach the gathering. The next morning, the battered caravan finally reaches the Grand Palace where the major gathering of the kingdom's nobility is being held. Despite surviving a deadly ambush, the exhausted count wants nothing more than to skip the annoying event and find a bed to sleep in. Alan arrives at the grand social gathering and is immediately amazed by the lavish venue, noting that almost everything inside is covered in pure gold. Hoping to avoid any troublesome attention, our hero decides to keep a safe distance from the rest of the high-ranking nobility at the party. But his plans of staying quiet are quickly ruined when two prominent nobles approach him, eagerly offering their territory's finest meat and financial support. As the young count silently stares at them in confusion, the nobles mistake his blank expression for deep anger and immediately begin to panic. Their sudden terror stems from the previous day, when they witnessed the aftermath of the mutated goblin ambush along the caravan trail. Terrified by the sheer scale of the magical destruction, they had cornered a hired spellcaster to find out what kind of monster had killed the beasts. Though they initially assumed it was a simple spell, the hired mage explains that the magic far surpassed her own third circle capabilities. This shocking revelation convinces the arrogant lords that the mysterious traveler possesses magical power reaching at least the third circle or higher. They conclude that the Count has been hiding his immense power all along, acting as his own bodyguard without needing any knights to protect him. Terrified of his supposedly cold and cruel nature, they drop to their knees in the middle of the ballroom and desperately beg him for mercy. While his loyal knight Evan quietly offers to drag the offending nobles away, our guy decides to let them keep bowing to avoid a public scene. With that minor incident resolved, the Count sends Evan to gather information and decides to scout around for any useful political news. By using his mana to enhance his hearing, he easily eavesdrops on a secret conversation taking place between two nearby nobles. The gossipers discuss a massive political alliance currently being formed by the powerful Alchia family and the influential Zenonia house. Our boy silently dismisses the news, knowing that the two notoriously hostile families are far too arrogant to remain allies for very long. However, his peaceful snacking is suddenly interrupted when the nobles reveal that neither of those two families is actually leading the new faction. The moment they name Count Palacio as the supreme head of the alliance, our hero immediately spits out his dessert in absolute shock. The announcement makes absolutely no sense to him, leaving him desperately trying to figure out how such a bizarre rumor could have spread. He recalls only meeting the young Duchess once in his life, and he has never even met the current Count Zenonia. Realizing that the rumors are already out of hand, he is suddenly approached by yet another noble who wants to speak with him. An arrogant young man named Carmine Camelon introduces himself, looking down at the Count with clear disdain and superiority. Carmine openly mocks our boy, claiming he only inherited his title through luck and questioning how such a weak noble could lead a faction. But before the Count can say a word, the defensive krilled noble steps in, furiously accusing the foreigner of insulting the nobility of Asteria. The hostile response leaves Carmine completely bewildered, as he had assumed it was perfectly safe to bully a supposedly friendless noble. In truth, the arrogant foreigner had traveled to the kingdom to secure a political marriage, fully convinced that no woman could ever resist him. But his massive ego quickly ruined his plans when he loudly insulted the looks of the other ladies present at the gathering. This offensive behavior prompted the Duchess to instantly cancel the engagement, leaving him utterly humiliated and looking for a target to vent his frustration on. Spotting the quiet Count, the foreigner had assumed the young man was a weak target who possessed zero political power. Instead, the surrounding lords immediately stepped forward to defend their supposed leader, completely cornering the trembling traveler. Alan watches the scene in confusion as the central figures of the kingdom's major political factions join the interrogation. The head of the moderate faction demands to know why a foreigner is speaking so disrespectfully to the Count of Palacio. Seeing the extreme pressure being put on the poor foreigner, the Count is suddenly reminded of his own painful military training from his past life. Reduced to tears, Carmine begs for forgiveness and flees the hall, while the worried lords turn to check if the Count is all right. Seeing these powerful figures defend him, the crowd becomes entirely convinced that the Count is indeed the mastermind of the underworld. Desperate to win the favor of the supreme leader, the nobles immediately offer him rare artifacts that can contain mana. Unable to resist the temptation of free magical gear, our boy chooses to keep silent and happily accepts the bribes. Later that night at the ducal annex, Duchess Loria Alchia meets with her ally to confirm if their leader accepted the gifts. She explains that accepting these valuable artifacts signifies a formal oath of loyalty to the head of the faction. Welcoming Marquis Mardanio into the alliance, they prepare to execute what they believe is the Count's grand plan for the kingdom. As noble factions gossiped about the mysterious influence of the Alchia family, opportunistic lords quietly scrambled to position themselves on the winning side of the emerging political divide. Loria sat in the candlelight with a confident smile, believing the chess pieces were finally perfectly aligned for her faction to make a grand move. 4 days into the grand noble gathering, Alan was baffled to find himself showered with endless luxury gifts from people hoping to bribe the supposedly terrifying Count. He had not planned any grand schemes, but he wore a devious smirk as he happily plotted to run off with his massive collection of free loot. His peaceful dreams were instantly shattered when his loyal knight startled him from behind, delivering an incredibly urgent update regarding the northern territories. A chaotic entity had unexpectedly manifested in the north, throwing the kingdom of Caliburn into complete panic as ancient scriptures linked the descent to legendary crystals. Upon learning that a particular village lay directly along their route north, Alan immediately ordered a detour to make a critical visit before reaching the capital. His knight questioned the sudden and suspicious change of plans, but our boy maintained a calm face and promised they would discuss the details during the journey. Behind that cool and mysterious facade, the young Count was completely panicking because the catastrophic events of the game were unfolding far faster than he anticipated. In the original game lore, these terrible entities would descend and drag the kingdoms into foolish wars, ultimately corrupting the land with strange and alien energy. Knowing that the entire world would soon fall apart from his experience playing the game, the Count realized his dreams of a lazy retirement were in serious jeopardy. He planned to wait out the weeks it took for the cosmic entity to stabilize, utilizing this time to write strategic letters and gather rare magical supplies. Meanwhile, the captain of the elite knights prepared his troops for the impending military march in the frozen north, only to be interrupted by his vice-captain. Learning that his beloved benefactor was traveling to the region, Deos immediately ordered a 2-week delay to their entire military schedule, just to welcome him. Arriving at the rustic northern settlement, Alan easily spotted a blue-haired child standing out in the crowd, immediately recognizing him from the game's official illustrations. This bright and energetic kid was Eleven, the literal main character of this dark fantasy world, who greeted the strangers with a warm and innocent wave. Though he currently appeared as just an ordinary villager, the Count knew this kid was destined to grow immensely strong and save the entire continent. Hoping to use the protagonist as a shield against the descending cosmic gods, Alan stepped forward and handed the confused child a massive pouch of gold. He then had his knight dump a staggering mountain of premium training potions, rare growth items, and miscellaneous treasures right in front of the boy. Calling it a strategic investment, our boy grabbed the future hero by the shoulders, commanding him to grow up quickly and defeat the evil gods in his place. Alan introduced himself as Count Palacio, telling the boy to remember his sponsor's name before turning around and preparing to board his carriage. Overwhelmed by this incredible kindness, the young protagonist chased after the departing carriage and shouted that he would never forget the Count's generosity. As they traveled, his knight wondered if it was wise to leave so abruptly, but Alan felt confident that the kid was smart enough to get the message. His knight noted that the child already possessed an exceptionally dense surge of mana, sensing that he was secretly wearing powerful hidden artifacts. The Count felt confident that this massive golden shortcut would accelerate the kid's growth, ensuring he could carry the burden of saving the world. But a sudden wave of anxiety hit the noble, prompting him to ask his companion if the fanatical knight would even be willing to meet him. With his worries mounting, our boy stared at the remaining items he had purchased, hoping these bribes would secure his peaceful and lazy future. 10 days after their last trial, Count Alan Palacio and his loyal knight Evan arrive at the northern gate of Caliburn. The journey has left them completely exhausted. Our guy reflects on his preparations for the coming crisis against the outer gods. He hopes the gifts he brought will please the young boy he sponsored years ago. As they wait for their security inspection to finish, the Count attempts to rest inside his carriage. However, Evan suddenly returns to report a serious problem at the gate. The gate guards have abruptly ordered their carriage to pull aside. A boastful knight steps forward, demanding they identify themselves. The guard introduces himself as Varan, a disciple of the Master Knight. This pompous attitude immediately irritates the Count, who asks what the issue is. Viren claims that a friend from a foreign land owes the Count a debt. Alan quickly deduces that he is referring to the arrogant noble he recently embarrassed. Viren recalls his pact with the foreign noble Carmine, who offered him abyssal resources. In return, Viren promised to beat the Count and leave him crippled. The corrupt guard thinks this will be an easy task. Since their target comes from a weak kingdom, he expects no retaliation. Viren demands that they hand over all the valuables in their carriage to buy their freedom. He is confident the Count has no connections in Caliburn. Believing his master will cover for any trouble, the corrupt guard prepares to draw his sword. But before he can act, an armored hand grabs him by the face. Viren gasps in agony as he is forcefully lifted off the ground. The guards look on in shock as their leader is easily overpowered. The young Master Knight Deus Macalian stands before them in dark armor. He is furious that anyone would dare to threaten his benefactor. Viren did not realize this traveler was the savior of Caliburn's youngest Master Knight. Deus has become a renowned hero, famously known as the Swordless. Lifting the corrupt guard even higher, Deus warns the other knights not to move an inch. He threatens to show them no mercy if they interfere. As Alan recognizes the boy, Deus slams Varan hard into the dirt. He tells the corrupt knight to be grateful that he cannot kill him here. The Count silently watches the violence, feeling deeply touched that his foster son has grown up to protect him. However, Evan is horrified by the brutality, although Alan worried the boy had forgotten about him. Seeing this devotion fills him with pride. He feels like a father watching his son succeed. Even tries to point out that Deus is mercilessly beating a man, but the Count completely ignores his knight's concerns in his paternal joy. But the Count quickly remembers a grim reality. This loyal child is still destined to become one of the 5 great sins who will threaten the world. Leaving the broken guard behind, Deus turns to Alan and bows deeply, politely offering to guide his benefactor into the capital. On the frozen battlefield, a Caliburn knight captain named Delman loudly celebrates a major victory. He boasts to his men that they have completely annihilated a dangerous barbarian clan. He then orders them to pack up and return to their forward base. However, he secretly worries about his reputation being overshadowed by Caliburn's newest Master Knight. Despite the kingdom's tradition of honorable warfare, the captain admits to setting an underhanded trap. He ambushed the barbarian chief with a hidden infiltration force when the chief came out alone. He used a deadly poison during the surprise attack to guarantee his target's death. Even though the body vanished during the chaos, he is confident the poison finished him. With his dirty work successfully completed, the captain eagerly anticipates the prestige awaiting him in the capital. But his triumph is cut short when they return to find their forward base completely leveled by an unknown force. A massive, terrifying presence towers over the smoking wreckage. The captain is frozen in fear, instantly realizing this monstrous figure is far beyond any human opponent. the entity demands to know why they defiled a sacred duel staked on honor. The entity reveals himself as the barbarian god Ultoris, offering the captain a final chance to speak. The god's overwhelming aura makes it clear that survival is highly unlikely. Desperate and refusing to submit, the captain commands his terrified knights to prepare for battle. Calling the soldiers dishonorable cowards, Ultoris declares that they do not deserve an honorable death. The god raises his hand and unleashes a devastating wave of energy. The knights are instantly crushed by the immense pressure, screaming in agonizing pain. Their heavy armor offers no protection as the sheer force begins to tear them apart. Ultoris mercilessly slaughters the remaining troops, breaking their bodies and weapons with ease. Within moments, the entire elite unit is completely wiped out. The god moves like a force of nature, leaving absolute carnage in his wake. The captain is left broken on the frozen ground, coughing up blood from his severe injuries. In his final moments, he begs the god to simply end his life. Ultoris welcomes his dying opponent to the Colosseum of the Undead. He explains that he wishes to personally bestow an honorable death upon those denied a proper end. The god demands that they prove they are not mere savages through a true duel before he vanishes. Meanwhile, back in the capital of Caliburn, a much calmer scene unfolds as Deus guides a guest. The local guards watch in absolute disbelief as the notoriously arrogant Master Knight bows respectfully to Count Alan Palacio. Deus is famous throughout the kingdom for his pride and immense power. He once beat up the second prince for harassing his sister and faced zero consequences. The guards know he would never bow his head to anyone other than the king. Seeing the legendary swordsman serve as a humble escort leaves the onlookers completely shocked. Alan is quietly stunned by the sheer scale of the massive mansion his former rescue now owns. He realizes that Deus has achieved incredible success since their last meeting. Finding the silence inside the mansion suffocating, Alan decides to get straight to the point. He believes this is the best way to show respect to the young knight. Alan calls out to Deus and explains that he has come today with a specific request. He speaks gently, trying not to sound like a demanding master. Deus is deeply touched, realizing that Alan chose to ask for his help instead of commanding him. However, Alan internally panics, worrying that his polite tone makes him seem incredibly shameless. The knight captain quickly guides Alan to sit down so they can comfortably discuss the favor. Alan finds the seating arrangement slightly odd, but he enjoys feeling like a respected parent figure. Alan explains that he needs to travel to the dangerous northern front. Deus agrees immediately and enthusiastically, shocking Alan with how quickly he accepts. Deus reveals that he was already preparing a northern military expedition, making the timing perfect. Alan then introduces his second, far more difficult request. He asks if it would be possible to borrow the Ring of the Mad One from Caliburn's treasury. The rare and powerful artifact is highly guarded, making the request incredibly risky. Back at the headquarters, the captain of the Solar Eclipse Knights prepares to greet his esteemed benefactor, sparking great curiosity from his younger sister, Siley. To ensure a proper reception, Deus orders a 2-week delay for their upcoming northern deployment, purely to welcome the man who saved them. The sudden change in the usually stoic captain's expression baffles his subordinate, just as our protagonist finally arrives at the Caliburn estate. Once they sit down, Alan makes a direct request to borrow the Ring of the Mad One, a powerful artifact kept within the royal treasury. While the noble worries his request is far too demanding, Evan suddenly enters the room with a collection of prepared items. Hoping to break the formal tension and ease the negotiation, the Count prepares to present some high-end gifts he brought along. Alan proudly offers a popular shoestring tie, internally pleading for the Master Knight to appreciate his thoughtful fashion choices. However, the commander simply thanks him and sets the package aside, leaving the noble to panic over a seemingly failed bribe. Mistaking the captain's quiet respect for disappointment, our boy hastily offers to pay whatever compensation is necessary for the favor. Deus immediately agrees to retrieve the artifact, completely ignoring the fact that it is locked inside the kingdom's heavily guarded vault. The captain calmly suggests that bypassing the palace guards with force is no issue, leaving the Count utterly stunned by his helper's casual threat of violence. Though our guy tries to talk him down from committing treason, the fanatical knight remains fully determined to deliver the ring at any cost. While Alan is touched by such intense loyalty, he cannot help but worry that his followers are a bit too extreme. Their intense conversation is suddenly interrupted when the captain's younger sister bursts into the room. The Count instantly recognizes Siley, the girl he secretly ordered Evan to rescue from a tragic fate in the original game's timeline. Deus immediately shifts into a fiercely overprotective brother mode, warning his sister not to speak with the older knight. While Evan complains about the cold treatment, the noble realizes how deeply the commander cherishes his family. Suddenly, the pieces click together and our protagonist realizes that the commander's absolute devotion stems entirely from saving his sister's life. Siley approaches the Count, thanking him for ordering her rescue, while the protagonist reflects on the dark future he managed to prevent. Receiving genuine appreciation from the girl brings a rare warmth to the noble's heart, even if his original plan was purely for self-preservation. With their bond strengthened, the Count decides to stay at the command mansion while preparing for the dangerous journey ahead. Astonishingly, Deus returns the very next day with the requested royal ring, leaving the noble completely dumbfounded by the impossible speed. Even quickly rushes in to deliver a shocking report about the retrieval. Apparently, the captain stormed the palace, ignored all protocol, and physically slapped the second prince when he tried to block the request. 3 days later, the count joins the solar eclipse knights on their march to the northern border. Upon arriving at the outpost 2 weeks later, they are greeted by grim reports of a massive encroaching undead army. Inside the command tent, the border officers argue fiercely over whether to retreat, terrified by the overwhelming strength of the enemy. The tension rises as the captain of the Preservation Order tries to restore calm among the panicked leadership. Deuce quietly reviews the battlefield status, learning that their elite swords have been devastated. The third sword has already fallen in battle, and the second sword has suffered near-fatal injuries at the western front. Looking out at the horizon, the commander can see the chilling landscape of red mana, a sign of the ominous power sweeping their bases. While the captain contemplates a strategic retreat, he is suddenly distracted by a strange smoke rising from the camp. To his absolute bewilderment, he finds the count calmly roasting sweet potatoes over a fire, casually muttering complex magical formulas. Meanwhile, the tower master Phinia cries in and argues with the outpost knights. She firmly states that her medical duties are finished, and she will not risk her life when their only hope is to watch over the wounded. But as she walks away, the mage freezes in pure terror upon spotting the count standing nearby, realizing the master of restraint is watching her every move. The blue-haired researcher Phenia falls into a state of panic when our boy suddenly approaches her out in the snow, desperately wondering what this terrifying noble could want from her now. Alan calmly explains that he came to collect a specific custom medicine. However, the trembling mage nervously stutters that she does not have any spare potions on hand and is currently far too busy to brew them. When the noble looks downcast and sighs about his family's struggling finances, the terrified mage instantly backtracks, frantically offering to brew the potions for the low price of just 1 gold coin. Alan quietly accepts the massive discount without hesitation. Meanwhile, her nearby subordinates watch in utter shock, horrified that their arrogant boss has just been so easily lowballed by the noble. As the researcher dashes away to begin her work immediately, the onlookers stare at Alan in absolute awe of his supreme negotiation skills, completely unaware that he is only thinking about eating his roasted potato. Suddenly, a heavy pressure fills the camp as the Master Knight Fiola senses a terrifying aura nearby. Alan immediately warns the troops that a surprise attack is underway, instructing everyone to prepare for battle. Vicious enemies ambush the northern outpost without warning, initiating a chaotic and bloody clash in the snow as the camp guards struggle to defend their perimeter. Phenia quickly takes action, casting a massive icicle spell that surges forward across the battlefield. The advanced ice magic instantly freezes the front lines of the enemy horde, halting their advance in their tracks. The Imperial soldiers charge forward to join the battle, slicing down the frozen monsters while the speed-based Master Knight leads the offensive with blinding sword strikes. But the real threat finally reveals itself as a colossal outer god manifests in the center of the camp. The entity declares that those who abandon their honor do not deserve a noble death. Fiola launches an immediate counterattack with extreme speed, but she is horrified to find that her rapid blade strikes cannot even scratch the skin of the divine creature. With a single effortless punch, the deity brutally crushes the Master Knight and throws her to the ground, leaving the surrounding guards screaming in panic as their commander falls. Recognizing the monster's strict adherence to ancient warrior codes, Alan steps forward into the clearing and invokes the sacred covenant to demand a turn-based duel of Babylonia. The deity is amused by the proposal, laughing loudly at the fact that a mortal knows the rules of his ancient era and eagerly accepts the formal challenge. With the agreement sealed, the god manifests a giant bloody colosseum that isolates the two combatants, creating a barrier that prevents anyone else from interfering with the match. Alan instantly feels the god's overwhelming pressure, realizing the entity is already on the verge of full descent, and thanks his luck for drinking the enhancement potion beforehand. Under the ancient rules of the duel, the challenged party is granted the first strike. The deity smiles wickedly and prepares to unleash his song of destruction directly at Alan. As the surrounding soldiers scatter to find safety, the hero stands completely still. He is bound by the second rule, which strictly prohibits the defender from moving during their turn. The outer god praises his opponent's adherence to honor as he throws a devastating punch, while Alan prepares to channel all his mana into a desperate defense. Invoking multiple restrictions at once, he chains together fixation, condense, and enhancement spells, concentrating every drop of his magic into a singular shield. The colossal strike smashes into the magical barrier with terrifying force. The resulting shockwave shatters the icy ground and creates a massive explosion that completely blankets the area in smoke. Recalling the blue-haired mage's instructions about her highest-grade elixirs, Alan checks his belongings and is relieved to find that the vital potion remains completely unscratched. He quickly drinks the healing potion to recover his strength, staring up at the giant monster with a confident glare as his own turn to attack finally begins. Our boy invokes the ancient laws of Babylonia, forcing the massive outer god to accept a turn-based duel where honor prevents him from defending. Having barely survived the god's opening strike, the young lord prepares to launch his counter-offensive. To maximize the strength of his upcoming attack, He begins layering severe restrictions on his magic, invoking the power of the Ring of the Mad One while standing on the brink of death. True to the sacred laws of the duel, the colossal deity waits patiently without making a single move. Since this world has no game-like time limits, he takes his time to carefully craft the perfect spell. First, he declares that his magic must bend the laws of this frozen tundra, and second, that it must activate only when he is on the verge of dying. As the energy gathers, he focuses all his mind on condensing the magic. He funnels his entire mana reserve into a pure, concentrated vortex of absolute death. Then, a massive spear of concentrated purple lightning descends from the heavens. For his third constraint, he targets the spell specifically at the deity, unleashing the full force of his modified magic. A blinding pillar of pure energy erupts, engulfing the battlefield in a silent, freezing blast. As the dust settles, our boy desperately prays that the strike was enough to finish his opponent, but despite having a massive hole blasted straight through his chest, the god stands tall and praises his strength. The young lord is horrified to realize that his ultimate attack has failed to defeat the monster. Instead of attacking, the deity is impressed that a mere human already possesses such a unique class. Sitting back, the god calls it an excellent duel and prepares to depart from the mortal realm. He muses that the blue and black organizations are definitely worth keeping an eye on. Since he lost the turn-based duel, he decides to grant the mortal both his authority and a legendary accessory. He warns him to call his true name when the usurpers finally break free, leaving a glowing belt behind. With the outer god gone, the busy soldiers gather their dead and prepare to return to Caliburn. Inside one of the departing carriages, the blue-haired vice-master of the magic tower nervously tries to make small talk. But when the count asks if she knows anything about the black and blue ones, she completely panics and begs for mercy. She flees the carriage in terror, leaving our guy feeling like some sort of cruel mastermind. Sighing, he turns his attention to the mysterious belt the deity left behind. The system description reveals it doubles his damage but also doubles the damage he takes, with a cryptic inscription directing him to a city named Kahara. Just then, Deus enters the carriage and casually asks if he should execute the disrespectful mage. The poor vice-master can only shiver in fear as she senses the knight's terrifying killing intent. 2 weeks later, the expedition safely returns to the capital, and the young lord returns the borrowed ring. Thankfully, the king of Caliburn sends him off with a mountain of gold and valuable treasures. Before parting, the young knight hesitantly asks if he could ever hope to become as strong as him. Our boy is utterly baffled, wondering why the youngest master knight in history would even ask such a question. He knows that even without fusing with the sins, these kids possess naturally overpowered abilities that will only grow stronger. So he warmly reassures the kid, telling him that his blessed talent will eventually take him wherever he wants to go. Deeply moved, the knight asks why the count always requests favors instead of simply ordering him around. With a soft smile, our boy simply asks who in their right mind would order their family around. As the knight salutes and walks away, our boy internally cries about how expensive parenting is, reminding himself that he only sponsored the kid to prevent his future corruption. Meanwhile, the knight sits alone in his quarters, deeply reflecting on the kindness his benefactor has shown him. Remembering the count's epic battle, he begins practicing the ancient hand signs to learn magic of his own. Though he is known as a cold-blooded killer in the capital, he can't help but smile at the thought of finally having a family. Alan finally returns to his estate after a long 3-month journey, eager to rest. But instead of a warm bed, he is welcomed by a towering mountain of paperwork. His former salaryman instincts kick in, forcing him to tackle the tasks before allowing himself to rest. A week later, he finally enjoys a peaceful breakfast with Evan, savoring the simple joys of wealth. However, his relaxation is short-lived as he continues to experiment with his magic. The persistent anxiety of a modern worker keeps him from fully relaxing. He decides to research the cryptic terms left behind by the dual god, Ultorus. He ponders the strange Eastern origin of the outer god's true title. The premature appearance of these entities threatens to disrupt all of his survival plans. His notes point to the ruins of Kahara, a secret dungeon located in Colony. Since the ruins have not been discovered yet, visiting now would only draw unwanted attention. As Alan practices his temperature-altering magic, Evan enters the freezing room. The knight is amazed by his master's progress during his supposed vacation, even then reports the sudden discovery of a hidden city in Colony. Meanwhile, the Blue Moon holding their semi-annual meeting through a communication artifact. These brief meetings usually end quickly, but the members are eager for updates. The usually silent Master Knight Deus surprises everyone by speaking up. He begins detailing how the Great Moon stood alone to challenge the god. Seolrang tries to interrupt, but Deus insists he has only reached the important part. He goes on to praise his lord's foresight and ultimate defense technique. While Seolrang is completely exhausted by the speech, Yusha listens with fanatical devotion. Deus finally finishes his report, bidding them farewell until the next meeting. The meeting set a record of 3 hours, leaving the members deeply inspired. Back at the estate, Alan is stunned by the sudden arrival of countless gifts. Even points out that these are valuable artifacts sent by unfamiliar nobles. Countless letters praise Alan for sponsoring the Master Knight in Caliburn. His salaryman mind tells him to accept the treasures as his emergency fund. A week later, The influx of gifts shows no signs of stopping. The constant stream of presents begins to feel like a burden. He decides he will eventually have to return the most excessive ones. A month later, as the gifts finally taper off, Alan must leave for the capital. He arrives in Teria to attend his first Grand Council meeting. Running late, he rushes down the palace corridors. He panics at the thought of drawing the entire room's attention. Even watches his master's fast pace, misinterpreting it as grand determination. He notices that other nobles seem to be lining up behind his master. Alan cautiously peeks into the Grand Council chamber. He is relieved to find he is not late after all. Recalling his research, he looks for the neutral seats in the middle. To avoid attention, he tries to sit in the very back. However, he is shocked to find the other nobles staring at him. Worried he caused offense, he tries to move to the middle rows, but the intense stares only grow heavier as he moves. He is forced to sit in the front row alongside the faction heads. As the meeting begins, Alan remains completely bored and wishes to leave. The speaker starts by announcing the voting rights of a new faction. He declares that the newly formed Cal faction has officially been recognized. The speaker then announces Count Palacio as their representative. Alan is utterly confused, having never heard of this faction. He turns to see Loria Altia and Kalia Zanonia sitting together, smiling warmly at him. He realizes their alliance has merged into a powerful new political force. The speaker asks Alan to share his thoughts as the official leader. Alan is horrified to realize he has somehow become the head of this shadow faction. He laments that this mandatory council duty is preventing him from visiting Colony. In the middle of a heavy snowstorm, a hooded assassin quietly begins to trail his next target through the deep snow. At the grand banquet, Alan is shocked to find himself named the leader of the new Cal faction. This sudden development completely ruins his plans of living a peaceful life. As the surrounding nobles cheer and toast to the birth of this dangerous organization, our guy nervously wonders if he has just become a convenient figurehead. Loria and Kalia approach him with proud, satisfied expressions. They are eager to show off the flawless event they put together in his name to earn his favor. The sudden development leaves Alan severely dizzy. He begins to question if he somehow possesses a split personality that is acting without his knowledge. Loria Altia thanks him for saving her life, which makes Alan realize his past letters were drastically misinterpreted as orders to unite the local criminal families. To make matters worse, other nobles have joined the faction by sending him a massive pile of tribute, even though he never wanted any of it. He recalls writing a simple apology note for his blunt attitude, but the fanatical ladies read it as a deeply calculated message from a mastermind. Alan quickly accepts that clearing up this massive misunderstanding is entirely impossible. Sensing the terrifying intensity of his two new subordinates, he decides to play along with the role for now, hoping he can retire at the right time in the future. In a bid to sound impressive, he calmly declares that they will start by sweeping up the underworld. Alan immediately makes a swift exit, leaving the nobles in absolute awe of his confidence. Desperate to escape before they ask any more questions, he tells Evan that they must leave for their journey to the desert colony immediately. Left behind at the banquet, Kalia and Loria eagerly discuss his cryptic command. They find the idea of uniting the kingdom's underworld to be incredibly exciting. Outside the venue, the assassin spots Alan leaving in his carriage. He sneers, believing that eliminating the young count will be an incredibly easy task. Though his leader warned him against making powerful enemies, the killer believes the astronomical reward makes this dangerous mission well worth the risk. Earlier, at Duke Kamelan's mansion, Carmini Kamelan met with the elite assassin to negotiate the contract. The resentful noble was determined to have Alan killed at all costs. The agents are known as an elite assassin guild of swordmaster-level killers. They tolerate no interference from outsiders while carrying out their bloody missions. Acknowledging the assassin's formidable strength, Carmine demands that they eliminate Count Palacio in order to avenge his bruised pride. The killer asserts that they never fail as long as the payment is right, but doubts Carmine can afford their fee. In response, Carmine reveals his leverage, presenting 4 glowing objects. The contract killer is stunned to see abyss entities, rare items traded at astronomical prices on the black market. Unlike ordinary orbs that only boost physical strength, these entities grant unique powers. Enticed by the incredible reward, the assassin accepts the job. Meanwhile, Carmine sneers in anticipation of Alan's imminent death. Before taking action, the killer checks in with Duke Kamelan, the true power behind the underworld. The Duke quickly realizes his foolish son has stolen from his own private stash. Deciding to turn a blind eye, the Duke orders the assassin to leave and carry out the mission without his official involvement. An underworld boss named Shutro then reports that they cannot expand their influence because Alan's faction has grown too massive. The Duke smiles, realizing this assassination is perfectly timed to solve his problem. Back in the present, the carriage travels down a dark forest road under the moonlight. The assassin leaps from the trees, closing in to strike the carriage and claim his prize. He believes the kill will be easy, but before he can land a blow, a strong hand catches him by the throat. The assassin is unable to move or breathe. It is Elevan, the game's original protagonist. He is currently keeping a close watch over his generous sponsor to protect him from danger. Smiling casually, the boy spins a deadly blade and tells the assassin not to waste his energy. With a swift flick, he unleashes a burst of energy, ending the killer's life in an instant. The boy remarks that the assassin only died because he dared to target Alan before dropping the weapon and vanishing into the night. Traveling across the blistering sands toward Colony, our guy and his loyal knight struggle to cope with the oppressive desert heat. While his companion complains about the temperature, the young count quietly contemplates his magical training, choosing to hold back his spells to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Their journey becomes more complicated when they are joined by Leanne Aguilaris, a talented fourth circle mage and the daughter of the Red Magic Tower Master. The young woman immediately treats the protagonist with open hostility, suspecting him of being a fraudulent noble. Having grown up surrounded by deceit, she holds a deep-seated hatred for liars and refuses to trust the rumors of his achievements. She watches him closely, convinced his low mana reserve makes him an obvious fake. But their journey is abruptly interrupted when the notorious Blood Sand bandits launch a sudden night ambush on the caravan. The raiders quickly surround the carriage and demand that the travelers hand over all their valuable cargo. The bandit leader quickly takes the young mage hostage, triggering a severe panic attack. Before the bandits can exploit their advantage, a sudden wave of sub-zero wind sweeps over the battlefield, stabilizing the girl's breathing. With a calm demeanor, the restricted mage invokes a complex spell that layers multiple magical arrays simultaneously. The display leaves the young woman completely stunned by his high-level magical control. Unleashing the full force of his icy magic, the hero instantly freezes the charging enemies in their tracks. He casually offers the survivors a single chance to run, prompting a frantic retreat. Seeing the aftermath, the skeptical mage realizes the terrifying rumors about him were entirely true. The grateful merchants host a celebratory feast to thank their savior for his timely intervention. During the quiet night, our guy analyzes his newly designed spell, which blends spatial, cold, and maintenance magic. By managing his custom restrictions, he has reduced his active penalties, though he knows the spell still requires refinement. Having witnessed his overwhelming power, the red-haired mage approaches him with a deep bow and offers a sincere apology for her earlier rudeness. The count easily forgives her, and the two spend the rest of their journey exchanging advanced magical theories. Soon, the caravan finally arrives at the gates of the bustling desert nation. Before they part ways, the young lady invites him to attend the upcoming magic conference as a representative of the Red Tower. Knowing the venue houses a rare artifact he needs, the hero gladly accepts her offer. However, a sudden explosion nearby disrupts their peaceful arrival in the city. Standing amidst the debris is a familiar beastkin girl, who has just pummeled a group of local troublemakers. Spotting her benefactor, the energetic girl enthusiastically rushes forward and throws her arms around him. As one of the powerful Baba Yagas of the region, the golden-haired warrior proudly boasts that she has cleared out the thugs who tried to target his luggage. The onlookers whisper in absolute shock, wondering what kind of powerhouse could tame the wild beastkin. While the protagonist quietly prays that the victim survived, the system notes his improved rank and increased daily spell limit. Alan and Evan arrive at the massive headquarters of Seolrang's guild, where her beastkin subordinates enthusiastically welcome their leader back home. A guild member named Ralga greets them warmly, mentioning that Seolrang had been waiting at the entrance every single day for Alan's arrival. Seeing the lively atmosphere, Alan praises her management skills, prompting the proud girl to declare that her guildmates are her true family. However, she quickly becomes flustered as she tries to figure out where Alan ranks in her heart compared to her other siblings. To escape the awkward tension, the young count signals Evan to bring out a special chest filled with gifts. Seolrang is absolutely thrilled by the gesture, instantly agreeing to help her benefactor with any task he might have. Alan presents her with the essence of the Golden Mani tribe, a legendary item that will enhance her combat abilities and keep her from falling into corruption. After letting their guest rest, Seolrang chats with the travelers while Evan complains about the brutal heat of the desert. However, when Evan casually mentions they were ambushed by bandits along the way, Seolrang's playful demeanor instantly vanishes. Determined to protect her benefactor, the beastkin locates the massive criminal hideout belonging to the Blood Sand bandits. She launches a brutal solo assault, easily smashing through the front gates and laying waste to the criminal defenders. The terrified bandit leader warns her that he is protected by a powerful champion, but she ruthlessly executes him to ensure Alan's safety. When Alan wakes up to find the entire gang wiped out overnight, he is left speechless by the sheer scale of the girl's chaotic strength. Meanwhile, at the local coliseum, gladiators continue to clash in a brutal arena steeped in blood and madness. A veteran fighter named Kalman claims victory once again, mocking the crowd and the weak challengers who dared to face him. Ralga approaches the champion, bringing news that his brother's bandit group was just wiped out by their rival Seolrang. Although Kalman admits he only used his brother to control the underworld, he decides to use the incident as an excuse to challenge Seolrang. Kalman then presents Ralga with a dark gift from their mysterious master, the Seeker, which is designed to grant artificial power. With this abyssal boost, they plot to take over the local underworld and eventually claim the colony's throne. 2 days later, Alan journeys deep into the desert and approaches the ancient, ruined city of Kahara. As the travelers investigate the massive stone entrance, a strange light begins to glow from the ruins. Suddenly, a booming voice resounds in Alan's mind, urging the young mage to enter the central tower. Leaving Evan behind to wait, The Count enters a forbidden tower that was completely inaccessible in the original game. Inside, a dark silhouette manifests, greeting the traveler and noting that he barely meets the requirements to communicate. Recognizing the entity as the outer god Ultoris, Alan asks about the requirements, only to be told he lacks the proper class. Despite the restriction, the god decides to teach him about principles, explaining that true magic is a law designated to the world. As the mysterious lesson begins, Alan tries to figure out if a recovery potion can solve his severe mana exhaustion. As Sealrong waits in the desert for her benefactor, Kalman suddenly ambushes her with a menacing grin. He has tracked her down to settle a blood feud outside the Colosseum. The Beastkin warrior is startled by his sudden arrival, but she immediately prepares herself for a fight. Kalman mockingly laughs as he launches a relentless assault, forcing her to block his heavy metal gauntlets. He reveals that his younger brother was the leader of the Bloodsand bandits she ruthlessly annihilated. Now, he plans to exact a painful revenge on her. He unleashes a dark aura to intimidate her. The golden-haired girl refuses to back down, unleashing a massive burst of yellow lightning to counter his strike. However, Kalman easily deflects the blow with a smirk, asserting that everything is going exactly as he expected. But before the clash can continue, Ralga unexpectedly stabs her through the chest from behind. The trusted guildmate smiles, mockingly telling her that she was far too obvious. The sudden pain leaves her gasping for breath. Seorang is completely frozen in shock, unable to believe that her closest companion has turned on her. She remembers how they used to smile and call her the best boss. She never suspected that he harbored such dark intentions. Ever since leaving the orphanage, she had desperately tried to recreate the warmth of her lost tribe. She truly believed that her new guildmates were her family. Now, that dream lies shattered on the desert floor. Yet Ralga cold-heartedly rejects her sentimentality, telling her to end the stupid act. He ignores Kalman's impatient demands and prepares to finish her off himself. He stands over her bleeding form with absolute contempt. Kalman boasts about the abyssal power he recently obtained, leaping into the air for another strike. He intends to crush her completely with his enhanced physical strength. His movements are fueled by dark energy. Seolrang desperately tries to dodge his blows, but the poison in her system begins to take effect. Ralga mockingly bids her farewell as she struggles to move. She collapses to her knees, paralyzed. Ralga explains that his blade was coated in a lethal poison that will paralyze her body. He boasts that he has unlocked the hidden authority granted by their tribe's essence, making him far superior. As she collapses to the ground in pain, the traitors gloat over their easy victory. Seolrang can only glare at them in frustration, unable to muster any strength. Ralga's strength is overwhelming, leaving her entirely at his mercy. Kalman suddenly notices a carriage approaching and realizes it must be Seolrang's benefactor. He decides to capture the newcomer to use as a hostage before killing him. He believes this will guarantee his victory. He charges toward the road, but he is suddenly stopped in his tracks by an icy wind. The temperature plummets instantly, catching the traitors completely off guard. A freezing mist rolls across the dunes. Ralga continues his cruel speech, telling Seolrang that the guild was never a real family. He points out that they only gathered for the power of the Golden Mane. His words cut deeper than any blade. Despite his harsh words, she refuses to let go of the warmth they shared. She silently wishes that this betrayal was just a terrible nightmare. Tears stream down her face as her hope begins to fade. Ralga prepares to extract the tribe's essence, declaring that the power belongs to someone else. He stands ready to rip the magic directly out of her chest. A sinister smile stretches across his face, but before his hand can touch her, a massive pillar of ice erupts from the ground. The sudden shield blocks his path, forcing him to step back in surprise. The bitter cold freezes the surrounding air. The traitors stare in disbelief as a cold, menacing aura fills the desert air. A dark silhouette steps forward, surrounded by wisps of black magic. The mysterious figure emanates absolute authority. Alan notices the black magic rising from Kalman, realizing it is the corrupt power of an abyssal entity. This means the world is changing much faster than he planned. He must act immediately to protect his ally. He immediately gives Seolrang a high-grade healing potion to stabilize her wounds. He reassures her that only a couple of her guildmates were actually traitors. The medicine quickly begins to take effect. Alan looks down at her with a calm expression, telling her that her guild is still a happy place. The girl is deeply moved by his reassuring words. Her despair begins to melt away. She drinks the potion and struggles to stand, determined to protect her benefactor. She promises to hold off the enemies while he prepares his next spell. Her eyes burn with renewed determination. Alan raises his hand and begins chanting, focusing all of his remaining mana. He has only one spell left to finish this battle. He prepares to cast his final spell, knowing that he cannot afford to fail. He recalls the true principles of magic taught to him in the ruins. By stringing the correct phrases together, he can alter the laws of nature. He begins to form the conceptual key. As the freezing energy gathers, Seolrang remembers her early days in the guild. She recalls how she and Ralga once promised to grow stronger together. She remembers their shared smiles, making the current betrayal hurt even more. As Kalman's younger brother launches a desperate final assault, Seolrang leaps in to defend her benefactor. Alan quickly steps forward and invokes the painted halberd of ice crystals to stop the attack. The spell conjures a massive spire of ice that erupts directly beneath the enemy leader. The sheer force of the cold halts the bandit's strike mid-air, encasing him in a freezing prison before he can land. The ice rapidly spreads across the battlefield, completely neutralizing the remaining rogue fighters. Kalman's brother is left frozen solid, unable to move a single muscle under the weight of the magic. With the entire threat encased in crystal, the desert winds sweep over the now silent and frozen wasteland. The battle has reached a sudden and absolute conclusion, leaving the surrounding sands covered in frost. Realizing his defeat, the frozen bandit leader can only stare in mute horror as the ice locks him in place. His final desperate screams of rage are completely silenced by the absolute cold of the spell. Despite his obsession with taking control of the tribe's essence, his ambitions are shattered by the freezing magic. With the enemy fully neutralized, Seolrang rushes to the mage's side with a deeply panicked expression. She watches in horror as our hero's condition suddenly worsens right in front of her. Alan suddenly coughs up blood, causing the beastkin to fear he has taken a fatal wound. In reality, the blood is merely the result of severe internal strain from completely exhausting his mana pool. He ignores the bandit's final confusing words about his father, relieved to have simply survived the ordeal. Alan realizes his oath of restraint acted as a multiplier, turning his ice magic into a god-slaying force. Because his opponent had absorbed a fragment of an abyssal entity, the restrictions twisted the laws to grant him immense power. The Count realizes he must comfort Seolrang to prevent her from succumbing to dark emotions. However, the guild leader tearfully blames herself for the injuries he sustained while protecting her. She demands to know why he risked his life to block the dagger meant for her. Alan calmly replies that a person does not need a reason to protect his own family. His words deeply move the beastkin, causing a sudden shift in her expression as she looks at him. He expects her to view him with the respect of a devoted daughter, but her thoughts are headed in a wild direction. Seolrang points out that she is a beastkin and he is a human, meaning they cannot be normal family. Instead, she enthusiastically declares that they should get married to become official family. The sudden marriage proposal leaves the Count completely dumbfounded as they prepare to leave the desert colony. Seolrang refuses to drop the subject, happily nagging him for an answer as she clings to him. Our hero desperately wishes for a skip button to escape the conversation, remembering how cute her childhood promises used to be. He attempts to set a firm boundary, stating for the 19th time that he only views her as family, but the beastkin remains persistent, promising that she will definitely make him happy if they wed. She demands that he give her a proper answer next time, leaving him to hope she will eventually give up. 5 days later, the news of the battle spreads, cementing Seolrang's position as the new Baba Yaga. Despite her new status, Seolrang remains focused on how she can best protect her benefactor. She resolves to build a powerful elite guard to ensure the Count is never harmed again. With her guild reorganized to meet her ideals, the beastkin begins training her forces. Later, Evan reports that the remaining hostile remnants have been completely cleared out. Although one threat is resolved, Alan remains deeply troubled by the premature arrival of the outer gods. To find answers, the Count travels to the eastern ruins of Kahara and enters the central tower. Deep beneath the stronghold, he discovers an ancient chamber containing a massive stone monument. He is surprised to find that he can read the inscription, which describes the 5 great sins. Each of the sins is detailed through metaphorical titles, aligning with the lore from his past life. However, the stone slab records the sins as outer gods, which directly contradicts the game's history. This massive lore discrepancy weighs heavily on his mind as he tries to piece the mystery together. Before he can dwell on it further, Evan arrives with a series of staggering reports about the children. Deuce has managed to defeat Caliburn's first sword in a duel after only half a year of training. Meanwhile, Rin has successfully secured a seat on Larthania's ruling council, gaining massive political authority. Raiden has also achieved legendary status, uniting the 5 archipelagos to become a true pirate king. The news leaves Alan completely stunned by the rapid growth and influence of his former orphans. But the final report is the most alarming. Yuxia has publicly declared her intention to marry the Great Moon. This sudden announcement sparks a fierce rivalry, causing a massive headache for the Count. With his children causing chaos across the continent, our hero can only dread what the future holds. In the shadows, the beastkin Seolrang proudly declares her intention to marry the Lord. While the others watch in silent dread, Cardinal Yutia forces a tight smile and acts supportive, though she is secretly furious. Everyone present can instantly sense that the Cardinal is barely holding herself back from snapping. Yuxia firmly tells Seolrang that such a marriage is completely impossible for mere shadows. However, the Golden Beastkin refuses to listen to reason. She points out that they must remain in the dark, and can never stand by their lord's side. She coldly asks Seolrang if she truly believes their master would ever choose her. Seolrang remains confident, recalling a moment when the young master assured her she wasn't bad. This innocent memory completely shatters Yushia's composure. Curious about the story, Deus asks the Beastkin to explain what happened during her encounter. After hearing the details, Deus begins praising the young master's absolute calm during their past battle. He describes him as a man who has walked through hell itself. Deus admits that he once doubted their master's strength, yet was warmly reassured instead of punished. Growing tired of his long-winded praise, Utia cuts him off and reiterates that marriage is still forbidden. Seolrang stubbornly refuses to back down. The two girls immediately resume their loud and chaotic bickering over the master. As the meeting falls into complete disarray, Rin quietly records the chaotic events in the official organization log. Deus tries to continue his speech, but he is completely ignored as Utia screams in frustration. Raiden can only sigh in exhaustion, deeply regretting his decision to attend the biannual meeting. Meanwhile, in a secluded capital tavern, two rival noble faction leaders discuss a way to dismantle the Cal faction. The royalist leader proposes using a Holy Kingdom Reformation letter to frame their target for heresy. Since the letter requires the support of multiple cardinals, the royalist demands half of the bribe to secure their agreement. The aristocratic leader Marquis Philboyd readily agrees to the terms, and the two men toast to their plan. To execute the scheme, the corrupt Cardinal Sergius schedules a private meeting with Cardinal Utia. Sergius asks her to lend her support to the Reformation letter, claiming it is a beneficial deal for both of them. He smugly explains that fabricating charges against the young count will be incredibly easy. Utia's expression grows dangerously dark as she realizes this priest wants to destroy her beloved lord. She asks if he is truly demanding that she help kill the very master she worships. Utia summons a massive surge of dark shadow magic, trapping the corrupt priest and beginning her brutal punishment. Sergius screams in agony and begs to be killed, but Utia refuses to grant him such mercy. She informs him that she has no intention of ending his life just yet, as she still has a use for him. Because he dared to plot against her master, he must suffer until he fully repents of his sins. 1 month after returning from the desert, the young count reluctantly prepares for a magic conference. He grumbles about the trip, wishing he could stay home to research the outer gods instead. Even brings him a letter confirming his official position as the head of the Cal faction. Alan initially complains about the heavy responsibility, but his attitude completely changes after checking his finances. Seeing the massive sum of gold deposited into his account instantly heals his stressed soul. Upon arriving at the conference, he is immediately greeted by Duchess Altia. Alan gives a polite response but grows incredibly nervous about being surrounded by dangerous underworld figures. His knight Evan runs over to deliver shocking news, explaining that the royalist leader has been arrested for heresy. Before Alan can even comprehend this, Marquis Philboyd approaches him, trembling in absolute terror. The desperate politician bows his head and begs the young count to spare his life. This public display of surrender shocks the onlookers as they watch a top politician bow his head in submission. In the political world, bowing before another nobleman is equivalent to offering them your entire authority. Kalia Zenonia watches in complete awe, convinced that the count planned this entire coup from the very beginning. Marcus Philboyd is in complete despair as he throws himself to the ground, weeping and begging Count Alan Palacio to spare his life. The terrified nobleman explains that just a few days ago, he received a mysterious envelope that looked exactly like a letter of reformation. Enclosed with the message was a magic crystal containing a brief but horrifying recording that left him shaking with fear. The recording showed Duke Rimgrave screaming in pure terror, serving as a clear warning that Philboyd would be the next target. Since a letter of reformation signals the absolute end of a noble's career, Philboyd is convinced that Count Palacio is the mastermind behind the threat. To save himself, the Marquis promises to retire from politics immediately, which leaves Alan completely clueless as to why he is being blamed. While Alan wonders if Duchess Altia and Kalia Zenonia are up to mischief, Kalia stands nearby, quietly marveling at her master's terrifying and deep schemes. This misunderstanding backfires perfectly, instantly silencing any rumors that Count Palacio is just a puppet being manipulated by his new allies. A few days later, Alan departs for the east to attend the Grand Magic Conference, while the disgraced Philboyd is quietly dragged off to the Holy Kingdom. His loyal knight Evan remains fully convinced that this was all part of Alan's master plan, leaving the Count completely unable to correct the misunderstanding. Meanwhile, in the labyrinth city of Larthania, a veteran guild master named Alderic leads his seasoned mercenaries down to find a highly lucrative target. Though targeting a safe floor is unusual, the veteran is confident that his seasoned party can easily collect the hefty advance payment. Upon reaching the 20th floor, the mercenaries are surprised to find a lone, green-skinned figure, dressed in strange foreign Eastern robes. Mistaking the creature for a rare but weak gold goblin, the party members eagerly prepare to capture their target. They confidently laugh at its tiny frame and strange clothes, expecting a massive payout for almost no effort. But their target is actually the terrifying king of starving demons, who sneers at their noise and instantly decapitates one of the mercenaries before they can react. Realizing they are facing a legendary calamity, Alderic draws his twin swords and desperately lunges forward in a futile attempt to protect his surviving men. The veteran party is completely annihilated, and the demonic king begins his slow, unchallenged climb to the surface world. Arriving at the grand conference venue, Alan stands in awe of the massive central tower that resembles a modern skyscraper. His old acquaintance Leanne Aguilaris welcomes him inside, and Alan asks her to guide him toward the archives before the conference presentations officially begin. Since the bodyguard Evan is forced to wait in the lobby lounge, Alan and Leanne head inside the grand building together to locate the library. As they walk through the corridors, they spot the arrogant Fenia loudly lecturing another magical apprentice. The arrogant woman continues to mock the lower-ranked mages, but her smug expression instantly vanishes when she notices the Count. Still deeply traumatized by Alan's overwhelming magical power, she frantically bows in terror and immediately obeys his calm command to sit down. Alan casually suggests that mages should try to get along, prompting Fenia to promise absolute obedience out of sheer fear. She quickly uses magic to escape the room, leaving a bewildered Alan to ponder what kind of misunderstanding she has. Leanne is absolutely astounded to see the notoriously prideful woman act so submissively, but they are soon interrupted by the arrival of a flashy young noble. The newcomer is Baruch, the pompous and arrogant son of the Purple Magic Tower Master, who introduces himself to the Count with a smug grin. After the flashy mage walks away, Leanne warns Alan that the arrogant noble is notorious for stealing the research of others to look like a genius. Alan quietly envies the noble's high rank, but Leanne points him toward the library, which is located up on the 38th floor. Upon arriving at the designated floor, Alan immediately begins adjusting all the clocks to solve a secret labyrinth puzzle. He successfully locates a titleless black book, retrieving the hidden nail guard right before the Magic Conference's friendly match begins the following day. Just as the match is announced, Baruch publicly steps forward to challenge Count Palacio to a direct magic duel. Watching from the crowd, Fenia realizes the arrogant noble has no idea that he has just signed his own doom by challenging a monster. Back at the Magic Tower, a proud young noble suddenly steps forward and challenges Count Palacio to a duel. Lion Aguilaris immediately apologizes to Alan, explaining that this challenger has been relentlessly pestering her for a marriage proposal. The arrogant challenger introduces himself as Baruch. He mockingly remarks on Alan's reputation for fighting an outer god, demanding to receive direct lessons from such a legendary figure. In truth, Baruch wants to exploit the rumors surrounding the mysterious Count. He hopes that defeating him will boost his own prestige among the elite mages. Believing that Alan is just a weak, third-rank mage who relies on lies to maintain his prestige, Baruch views this match as the perfect stepping stone. He continues to pressure Alan in front of the crowd, mockingly asking if the Count is too afraid to accept a friendly match. Annoyed by this pointless and noisy harassment, Alan calmly accepts the challenge. He decides to quickly deal with the fool to restore his peace and quiet. As the referee signals the start of the match, Baruch prepares his magic. He plans to end the fight before Alan's supposed weaknesses are exposed. Baruch aims to use the match to elevate his own name. However, as he readies his spell, he suddenly notices a strange chill freezing the air. Before the challenger can cast, his feet feel incredibly heavy. He looks down in horror to find his legs completely encased in thick ice. Alan silently activates the passive effect of his magic, instantly freezing the surrounding area as soon as his spell begins to manifest. Up in the spectator stands, the rank 5 mages discuss the unbelievable rumors about the Count. They wonder if the stories of his godlike power are true. The senior mages observe that Alan's mana reserves are surprisingly small. This detail makes them doubt whether the rumors are merely exaggerated lies. They expect the match to reveal the Count's true strength. However, Alan is about to show them a level of magic that defies all logic. Alan begins combining multiple high-tier ice spells with absolute precision. The temperature in the arena drops rapidly, whipping up a freezing blizzard that shocks the spectators. The senior mages watch in complete disbelief. They realize the Count has simultaneously cast 3 distinct spells, a feat even a rank 5 master cannot do. Alan calmly continues his complex casting sequence, focusing on ice crystallization. Meanwhile, a panicked Baruch desperately struggles to break free from the restraints pinning him down. In a desperate bid, Baruch attempts to use forbidden lethal magic from the Purple Magic Tower. However, Alan's ice wall instantly shatters his attack. The entire arena is buried under a massive glacier. The spectating mages stand completely frozen in shock at this absolute display of magical dominance. With the arrogant challenger entirely encased in ice and unable to fight, the referee has no choice but to declare Alan the victor. Immediately after the match ends, the senior mages run down to the arena and crowd around Alan. They eagerly beg him to explain the secrets behind his incredible spell arrangement. Alan politely claims that he is merely a humble third-rank mage. However, the crowd assumes this is just a sign of his immense modesty. Terrified of drawing even more attention to his fake power, the Count slips away from the fanatical crowd, leaving the mages looking for him in vain. Finally finding a quiet spot, Alan takes a moment to rest. He decides to continue his research on the tower's lower levels. He analyzes his new claw artifact, which is designed to retain and amplify spells. This tool will help him bypass his casting limits. By utilizing this specialized artifact, Alan realizes he can cast his most powerful ice spell while still keeping his daily spell count fully available. He begins to understand that knowing the true meaning behind ancient magical phrases allows him to manipulate the very laws of reality rather than just changing spell shapes. Deeply intrigued by how his magic is developing, Alan prepares to head down to the 38th floor of the tower to solve the next riddle. As soon as he arrives on the designated floor, a mysterious voice echoes through the library. The voice commends him for successfully solving the puzzle at the perfect time. The voice belongs to a floating girl in a massive witch hat. She introduces herself as Heinkel, the legendary chalice of beginnings. Alan immediately recognizes her. In the game's history, she was the first archmage to reach the 8th rank in the post-mythical era. He remembers that players called her the Retray Witch. A single wrong choice in her dialogue options would result in instant death. The Count carefully reviews the holographic dialogue choices before him. He is terrified of picking the wrong option and triggering her legendary hot-tempered wrath. Despite her terrifying reputation, Heinkel is surprisingly short in person. She starts complaining when he hesitates to choose an option, though she has a cute baby face. To prepare for the worst, Alan secretly sets up some defensive magic. He cannot afford to make a mistake and die instantly. But before Alan can even select a dialogue option, Heinkel suddenly freezes. She shrieks in absolute terror, looking at the space right behind him as if she saw a monster. Alan is completely baffled by her sudden panic. He can only watch in silence as the floating witch begins to tremble violently, her massive hat doing all the heavy lifting. Without warning, Heinkel screams and thrusts a treasure chest forward. She desperately tells him to take the item and leave her alone. She immediately vanishes from the room in a flash of light. Alan is left standing completely alone, holding the chest in confusion. Alan looks behind him, wondering what could have terrified a rank 8 archmage. However, the hallway behind him is completely empty, and he is just glad to get the item so easily. Alan continues his magical studies at the academy, finding that discussing complex concepts with the highly skilled red-haired mage Lien is far more productive than studying entirely on his own. Their quiet session is cut short when Evan reports that a dangerous outer god appeared in Larthania a week ago, prompting the young lord to prepare for an immediate journey. Finia happily bids them farewell at the gate, leaving our hero feeling deeply unsettled by her surprisingly cheerful demeanor as their carriage finally rolls away from the tower. The long journey proceeds smoothly over the next few days, and the travelers finally arrive at Larthania, the famed and bustling city built around the labyrinth. Upon entering the commercial district, the knight is astounded by the massive appraisal enterprise Rini has built, proving to Alan that money can solve almost any problem in this world. Seeking her help to join the expedition, the protagonist enters the grand building to request a meeting with the owner, but the receptionist stops them at the front desk. Assuming they are just ordinary guests trying to bypass the long queue, the clerk smugly demands an astronomical fee of 3,000 gold coins just for a walk-in. When the young lord inquires about booking a standard appointment instead, he is horrified to learn that the busy shop is fully booked for the next 10 months. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted when the lord's arrogant son arrives at the shop, expecting immediate service and pushing past the other customers with absolute disdain. The pampered noble demands they clear out of his way, but his loud boasting is cut short when the green-haired shop owner personally steps outside to investigate the noise. Rin completely ignores the demanding noble to greet her godfather with deep respect, quickly ordering the guards to throw the screaming troublemaker out of her shop. The angry noble storms off, swearing vengeance against them, prompting the protagonist to worry that offending the local ruler's family might cause serious issues for her business. After sitting down to catch up over a lavish meal, the young lord asks why she addresses him as godfather, whereas all of the other children call him their benefactor. She calmly explains that godfather is the only title she finds suitable for him, leaving our guy quietly proud of how mature and capable she has become on her own. Getting to the point of his visit, the protagonist asks if she can use her local influence to place him into the outer god suppression unit currently being formed. Rin reassures him that securing a spot is not a problem at all, encouraging her godfather to rest in her guest rooms after his long and exhausting journey. Lying awake in his room, our hero is relieved that the matter is resolved so easily, glad that he has plenty of time to prepare his plans for the upcoming hunt. The next morning, Rin wakes him to announce that his placement in the upcoming strategic meeting with the top mercenary guilds of the city has already been finalized. She then casually mentions that she solved their problems with the Lord's son by giving the arrogant noble a clean and quiet death to prevent any future annoyance. Though the pampered noble was a corrupt villain in the original game story, the protagonist is absolutely terrified that his ward has committed such a high-profile political murder. He remembers she is destined to become the sin of greed, but she gently reassures him that the assassination was clean and left absolutely no evidence for the guards. Realizing her mind cannot be changed, our guy accepts the result, but warns her not to take risks that could ruin the stable life she worked hard to build. Rin then pulls out the magical artifact he gifted her years ago, explaining that she has successfully used it to gather powerful imprints from high-value items. Looking at the status window, our boy realizes the device has developed incredible new abilities, which explains how her shop gained fame and fortune so rapidly. Alan praises her diligent work before she leads him down to the guild chambers to meet the leaders of the Outer God Suppression team. The moment they enter, the hardened mercenary guild leaders react with immediate hostility, mocking the young lord as a weak noble trying to leech off their hard work. Despite their open arrogance, the protagonist remains calm, quietly resolving that he will simply have to prove his capabilities once they enter the dangerous dungeon. Alan decides to display his magic to convince the mercenaries to follow his lead. Knowing standard attacks won't work on gods, he unleashes a freezing wave of cold to establish absolute authority and command their attention. Maverick feels insulted by this sudden display of power and demands to know if the noble is starting a fight. The icy room goes quiet as the mercenaries tense up, ready to draw their weapons. Argonia steps forward, warning the young master that he is walking on incredibly thin ice. Behind his calm facade, Alan internally panics, desperately hoping he did not just ruin his own plan. He remains seated on his frost-covered throne, trying to look as intimidating as possible. He only provoked them because he knows the upcoming battle requires their complete cooperation. This scenario perfectly mirrors a special quest from the game, and he must guide it carefully. The icy frost slowly begins to melt as they wait for their captain's final decision. Alan silently prays that the captain recognizes his strength rather than starting a futile brawl. Argonia stares at him with her green cat-like eyes, analyzing the noble's quiet confidence. Finally, she commands her subordinates to stand down, bringing an end to the tense standoff. She reminds her crew that they were the ones who first insulted the Count's house. Once Maverick backs away, Argonia asks when they will begin their descent into the labyrinth. Alan suggests waiting 2 days, but she recommends postponing the final discussion until tomorrow. With a polite nod, he accepts her terms and prepares to leave the chamber. Once alone, Alan clutches his chest, swearing he will never pull a stunt like that again. Back in their quarters, Maverick complains that they let a weak noble push them around. Another mercenary quickly tells him to shut up, explaining that their leader just saved his life. He explains that the sheer speed of the ice magic was beyond anything they could react to. Had the captain not intervened, Maverick would have been frozen solid in an instant. Meanwhile, Argonia recalls an ancient warning her mother gave her hundreds of years ago. She was warned never to look into the black eye in the night sky. Her mother had pleaded with her to erase the memory of that terrible entity entirely. The warning was clear: never stand against the consumer of class. This title refers to the Demon King, a legend that still haunts her memories. She shivers, wondering if Count Palacio is somehow connected to this ancient myth. She cannot shake the feeling that the noble is hiding a terrifying secret. The next morning, the meeting goes surprisingly well as Argonia agrees to follow Alan's strategy. The other mercenaries follow suit, voting unanimously to accept the young lord's plan. Rin smiles, noting how easily the guild leaders were swayed by her godfather. Alan is relieved, glad that his knowledge of the game's lore saved the day. With their plan finalized, the suppression unit enters the dark ruins of the labyrinth. They begin their descent, easily destroying any low-level monsters that block their path. Alan watches the mercenaries fight up close, glad he did not attempt this raid alone. As they walk, Mayan catches up to the noble to ask him a personal question. She asks if his display of ice magic was a sign of his dislike for beastkin. He assures her it was not discrimination, prompting a playful smile from the warrior. She then casually suggests they have a child together, saying they would make a cute kitten. Mayan talks about the proposal as if it were a perfectly normal topic of conversation. Alan is completely stunned by her bluntness, having only known her as a useful game character. To her tribe, strength is everything, making the young lord the perfect potential partner. He immediately rejects the offer, but she continues to tease him with a wink. Rin's glare intensifies, asking her godfather if she should execute the beastkin on the spot. Alan quickly calms her down, and the group continues their march into the second day. The mercenaries search the chambers, frustrated by the lack of direct paths. Rin notes that they are still stuck on the 4th floor after hours of walking. Alan complains internally, comparing the tedious physical search to the instant transitions of the game. While he ponders the origins of the labyrinth, Argonia calls out to the group. She points toward a glowing blue portal that will take them deeper. She announces their transition to the 5th floor, much to the relief of the tired crew. The unit steps through the portal and enters a lush, sunlit, grassy plain. Alan recognizes this place as a safe floor, which served as a save point in the game. Argonia instructs everyone to rest and prepare their gear for the upcoming boss fight. The mercenaries set up camp, confident they have plenty of time to prepare. Alan collapses onto a rock, exhausted from the physical strain of the descent. Maverick mocks him, laughing at a noble who pants after a simple walk. The other mercenaries laugh along, ignoring the eerie silence settling over the safe zone. Suddenly, the sky darkens, and the light from above begins to fade. Mayan's ears twitch as she senses a powerful presence approaching them. A deep, echoing voice demands to know who dares look at him without permission. The mercenaries look up in horror as a green-skinned figure appears on the high pillars. The entity floats above them, radiating a suffocating pressure that freezes the unit in place. Alan steps forward, staring directly at the powerful monster. The Demon King calls him a bug, amused by the human's lack of fear. Alan speaks his name aloud, identifying the entity as the Demon King Kalis. Kalis is surprised that a human recognizes him and mockingly praises his knowledge. Alan internally panics, wondering how the boss managed to arrive 3 days early. The Demon King offers to spare the mercenaries if they scram immediately. Refusing to abandon the mission, Alan calmly tells his allies to get ready. Argonia draws her blade, ordering the entire suppression unit to prepare for combat. Alan notices that the Demon King has not yet fully integrated into this world. This incomplete state gives them a slim chance at victory if they act quickly. Kalis smiles, welcoming their resistance as they prepare to clash. The battle for the safe floor is about to begin. The massive demon quickly notices the unique weapon in their hands. He mockingly points out the dispel sword they brought to the battlefield. However, our guy remains composed, knowing his magic still works against a god who hasn't fully incarnated. As the dark entity hovers menacingly, the hero begins channeling his energy for a swift strike. He is fully aware that timing is critical in this fight. He must end this battle as quickly as possible to secure a victory. The entire environment freezes around them as massive pillars of ice erupt from the grass. Our guy begins reciting his ancient incantations, preparing to unleash his most devastating elemental attack. The surrounding energy spikes, and his allies brace themselves for the absolute cold. Rin opens her magical tome to assist, chanting complex formulas to stabilize the spell. Simultaneously, our guy activates the Snowy Mountain Principle. He manifests a colossal crystal halberd directly above the unsuspecting demon. Rin continues to chant, channeling her green mana to construct a supportive barrier. The surrounding temperature drops rapidly as the colossal weapon of ice hovers directly over their target, ready to drop. With a sudden downward gesture, the massive glacier spike crashes down with earth-shattering force. The strike lands directly on the Demon King, triggering a colossal explosion of ice. The freezing shockwave consumes the entire area in a matter of seconds. The hero desperately hopes this direct hit will end the monster once and for all. However, as the thick fog of ice begins to clear, a terrifying truth is revealed. The demon stands completely unharmed, casually brushing off the crystals. The Demon King looks up with a sinister smirk, mocking their best efforts as mere bugs. He effortlessly sliced through the massive halberd of ice crystals. The total destruction of his spell leaves our guy completely shocked. Deciding to match his opponent's level of play, the Demon King prepares to release his true energy. The ground violently shakes as black chains erupt from the earth. They quickly surround the entire area, sealing their escape. The massive chains lash out and wrap around the mercenaries, trapping them in place. The guild leaders can only watch in absolute terror. The overwhelming pressure of the entity completely paralyzes their bodies. With a simple wave of his hand, the monster invokes an unknown principle. A sudden shockwave rips through the clearing, instantly shattering their defenses. The entire suppression unit is thrown into complete chaos. The force of the impact hits our boy directly, sending him crashing backward onto the grass. The mercenaries cry out in panic as their main line of defense is easily broken by a single attack. Floating high above the battlefield, the Demon King prepares his next attack. He mockingly asks how they plan to dodge a strike from the sky. The trapped warriors look up in despair, realizing escape is impossible. The entity smiles mockingly, expressing his high expectations for their struggle. Meanwhile, the hero desperately analyzes the incoming spell. He realizes he has never seen magic of this nature in his life. They are completely outmatched in skill, information, and raw power. Even so, the hero refuses to yield to the beast. He resolves to push his magic to its absolute limits to protect the team. Invoking the Snowy Mountain chant once again, our guy conjures a massive barrier of ice crystals. The protective shield rises just in time, blocking the devastating barrage raining down from the sky. Seeing that raw defense is only a temporary solution, the hero calls out to Rin for assistance. The young girl immediately responds, ready to support her godfather with everything she has. Rin unleashes her green chains to bind the demon. However, the monster simply watches their desperate struggle with absolute amusement. He floats casually, treating their lives like a game of cat and mouse. The strain on the hero's body is immense, causing him to cough up blood as he repeatedly defends. He has already consumed 5 mana potions. The severe side effects of overconsumption begin to take hold. The demon strikes with incredible force, but Rin steps in to deflect the brunt of the impact. The resulting shockwave forces them back, leaving the hero clutching his chest in pain. A system window appears, confirming that he has met the condition for casting magic in a frigid land. However, our boy knows he cannot twist the laws of the world without facing a dangerous penalty. The Demon King lectures him, explaining that magic in this world moves from phrases to principles. While the monster speaks, our guy desperately searches his mind for a secret technique to turn the tide. In his desperation, a mysterious voice suddenly echoes in his mind, offering a hint about a conceptual mark. It speaks of realization and delusion sharing the same root. It promises a key to those who can reach it. As the Demon King approaches to deliver the final blow, the hero pieces together the cryptic words. The surrounding atmosphere shifts dramatically. A strange, ancient energy begins to swirl around them. Annoyed by this sudden shift, the demon attacks, but the hero has already initiated his spell. The massive ice crystals around them begin to change shape. They rotate in a perfectly synchronized pattern. With his hands locked in the Bodosri sign, our guy transforms his ice spear into a massive key. The concept of the weapon shifts entirely. It locks directly into the center of the frost crystals. The massive key inserts itself into the frozen crystal structure and rotates, unlocking a terrifying power. Our guy invokes his ice halberd spell once more. This time, the scale is completely different. A colossal glacier descends upon the grasslands, instantly freezing everything in its path. The overwhelming cold completely entombs the Demon King. He is sealed away in a massive block of ice, ending the battle. Having unleashed the painted halberd of ice crystals, the hero successfully freezes the massive Demon King. Yet the young noble wonders if he has truly grasped the essence of self-expression magic. Our guy coughs up blood from the sheer toll of casting magic beyond his current limits. Even so, he has achieved his goal, forcing the Demon King to admit defeat. As the Demon King crumbles away, he agrees that making excuses for his loss is completely meaningless. Standing alone in the quiet aftermath, the young noble struggles to keep his balance. His vision turns dark, and he collapses onto the frozen ground. Waking up with a pounding headache, our guy realizes he is safely recovering inside the tents of the suppression unit. His body is entirely paralyzed from severe mana poisoning, a dangerous side effect of abusing high-tier potions. Still, the young noble is just glad to have survived the encounter. Rin enters the tent to check on him, relieved that her godfather has finally awakened after being unconscious for an entire day. She reports that the other guild members survived the demon's attack and are already recovering from their wounds. Looking deeply conflicted, the girl asks why he would risk his own life to rescue her from danger. Our guy is completely caught off guard by her sudden question. Believing she was nothing but a burden, she considers his rescue to be highly inefficient and completely irrational. The young noble quickly clarifies that he never raised any of them just to be used as tools. Internally, however, he panics, wondering if he is destined to be viewed as a villain. Looking gently at her, the hero declares that he considers all of them to be his true family, making it only natural that he would protect her. Moved to tears, the girl realizes she was never just a pawn to be used against the dark entities. She bows her head, finally accepting his genuine warmth. 5 days later, our boy recovers enough to walk, only to be immediately confronted by his loyal knight. The knight furiously lectures him for getting hurt, while the noble silently reflects that keeping his servant away was necessary to protect the original timeline. As praise for the suppression unit spreads across the region, they prepare to depart, prompting Rin to ask for his birthday. He casually reveals his birthday is in September, a date the young appraiser vows to permanently engrave in her memory. Inside the carriage, the servant teases him about future celebrations, while our guy secretly hopes to receive a rare magical item. Left behind in the city, the girl stands in the snow, deeply comforted by the fact that she finally has a family. For the girl, the title of godfather is no longer just a respectful label, but a bond closer than family. With his birthday approaching, the young appraiser smiles as she begins planning the perfect gift for her savior. Months pass as winter settles over the estate, and the noble spends his days handling paperwork until his servant delivers a communication crystal from Altia. The young duchess contacts him to deliver her regular report, bowing respectfully to the count, who has reluctantly become her faction leader. She proudly announces that their faction has completely taken control of the kingdom's underworld. The news leaves the noble completely bewildered, wondering when he ever gave such an order. He had only spoken casually about cleaning up the criminal syndicates, believing it was an impossible task that they would surely ignore. The Duchess praises his brilliance for clearing out their political rivals. Swallowing his confusion, the hero quickly instructs her to simply maintain the status quo. The noble faces a major crisis, realizing he has accidentally conquered the entire underworld overnight. His headache only grows when he spots an official letter on his desk, containing an inescapable invitation to the upcoming royal ball. Although all he wanted was to live a lazy and peaceful life, the young count must now prepare to face the kingdom's royalty. Deep inside the 5th floor of the labyrinth, the Demon King contemplates the trials to come. With a dark, mysterious smile, the monster vanishes into thin air. Back at the estate, Alan receives a royal summons and lets out a heavy sigh. He worries that his faction's underworld activities have finally caught the Queen's attention. Queen Sion Cretenia is the absolute monarch of Asteria, carrying the powerful royal bloodline. He wonders if she will actually intervene in the underworld's affairs. However, our boy realizes this might be the perfect chance to weaken his own faction. If he plays it safe, he might get the lazy lifestyle he always wanted. Reassuring himself, he prepares to go, confident that he is just an innocent bystander. Meanwhile, a bald assassin investigates the dark forest and discovers a dead ally. The agent examines the corpse, realizing the victim's neck was brutally snapped. The noble client is furious, demanding to know why the request to kill Alan failed. The assassin promises to confirm the situation, fearing he will become the scapegoat. Returning to the corpse, he detects traces of highly advanced protective magic. He grows anxious, worried that this failure will ruin his guild's perfect record. To find answers, The agent decides to hunt down an insider close to the Count. In the capital city of Caliburn, the assassin corners the Master Knight Deus Macallion, demanding secrets about his benefactor to save his own life. But Deus merely looks at him with absolute indifference, refusing to cooperate. Suddenly, invisible magical threads trap the assassin midair, completely sealing his movements. The trapped agent gasps in horror as cursed spirits begin to manifest around him. Deus calmly identifies him as one of the mysterious agents targeting their master. Yuxia appears from the shadows, furious that someone dared to speak Alan's name in her presence. Back at the headquarters, the top members of the organization assemble. Yuxia and the beastkin Seolrang immediately begin bickering over who gets to marry their master. Rin sighs in exasperation, watching the two girls argue over their loyalty. She interrupts the argument to propose a new system for sending reports. The girls argue over who should personally deliver letters to their beloved godfather. Rin insists on managing the special reports herself, smiling smugly while Radin watches her with a deeply disturbed expression. Just then, Deus finally arrives to join the meeting. Raiden points out that the night is unusually early for once. Deus quickly cuts to the chase, warning them that the Assassin Guild is targeting Alan. The news shocks Utia and Rin, instantly putting them on high alert. Hearing that 12 assassins remain, Utia violently demands they slaughter every last one of them. Raiden raises his hand, suggesting they gather information and form a proper plan first, but the girls immediately accuse him of being a traitor for wanting to wait. Raiden frantically tries to defend himself against their accusations, but quickly backtracks and agrees to attack the targets immediately. With everyone in agreement, Deus wraps up the meeting to prepare for the hunt. Raiden grumbles about the accusations, reflecting on his absolute loyalty to the Count. He admits to himself that his companions are completely fanatical in their devotion. Meanwhile, Alan arrives at the royal castle and bids farewell to Evan. Even watches him walk away, deeply proud of his master's immense status. He reflects on how far they have come since the days of being ostracized. But our guy looks back in panic as a crowd of nobles starts following him. He complains that their presence makes him look like he is leading a rebellion. Alan enters the Grand Palace Hall, marveling at the incredible royal architecture. He notices the rival factions watching, eager to see him get reprimanded. Telling himself to calm down, he resolves to act submissive and accept the lecture. The queen commands them to raise their heads as they approach the throne. Sion Cretenia asks if he is the current count, and he politely confirms his identity while the surrounding nobles hold their breath. The queen begins her announcement, looking directly at the young lord. But instead of a scolding, she officially promotes him to the rank of Marquis. At the grand royal banquet, Queen Sion Cretenia takes the stage and officially bestows the high title of Marquis upon the young count. Our guy is left utterly speechless as the queen explains that this rank is his reward for successfully purging the city's corrupt underworld. He can't help but panic, wondering if the ruler is secretly demonstrating her power to warn him against making any sudden moves. As the entire hall holds its collective breath, the protagonist tries to maintain his composure while his mind continues to race with wild theories. The queen simply tells him that a smile would look much better on his face before she casually departs, leaving him even more confused. The surrounding crowd erupts in enthusiastic congratulations, while Loria Altia and Kalia Zenonia watch in awe at their leader's rising influence. But not everyone is pleased with this sudden promotion, as a rival noble seethes with burning rage at the Count's new title. He slips away into the dark slums, recalling the agonizing month of torture he suffered in the Holy Kingdom because of the protagonist. Determined to put an end to his rival, the man approaches the hidden hideout of the elite assassin guild known as the Agents. Upon entering the gloomy chamber, he is startled to find a mysterious figure already waiting for him in the shadows. The figure is actually Seolrang, who has already made quick work of the guards and stands over a fresh corpse. Unaware of who she is, the noble offers to pay any sum if the guild kills the new Marquis, prompting a deadly grin from the beastkin. Sighing at the foolish request, the beastkin complains about the minor annoyance before she decides to take matters into her own hands. She swiftly beats the noble to the floor, leaving him bloodied and begging for his life as he promises to pay whatever she wants. She demands to know why he would dare try to target her benefactor, proudly declaring that the young Marquis is actually her husband. With a final swipe of her claws, she ensures that nobody will ever lay a hand on her beloved. Back at the palace, our guy is completely oblivious to the chaos as he happily stuffs his face with delicious banquet desserts. A week later, Alan travels in his carriage with Evan, complaining that he still has no idea what the queen was planning with the promotion. They arrive at the border of the desert, preparing to make the rest of their journey on foot toward their next destination. Our guy reviews his heavy workload, knowing he must visit the ruins in Colony and revitalize the artifact he obtained from the labyrinth. He hopes to deal with the Assassin Guild to secure his safety, hoping the protagonist of the Empire's game will handle the rest of the world's problems. Stepping out of the carriage, Alan explains that their first goal is to draw out the nearby threat of the Assassin Guild. Shivering in the dark caves, the two approach the location of the guild's boss, only to find the entire area completely silent. To their surprise, the secret base is in complete ruins, showing signs of a massive and violent struggle. Several hours earlier, the legendary leader of the Assassin Guild, Al-Kamael, stood proudly inside his grand mansion. He laughed when Utia arrived to take his life, boasting of the countless famous warriors he had slain over the past 3 centuries. However, his confidence is instantly shattered when Yuxia unleashes a horrifying dark magic that traps him in a spiral of despair. The fanatic warns him that targeting her master is a sin that can only be paid for in blood. The terrified assassin tries to flee for his life, but his speed is nothing compared to the wrath of the Bloody Queen. A massive, grotesque creature emerges from the shadows to violently crush him, ending his long reign of terror. Yuxia finds a letter sent by Seorang, mentioning a trip to the ruins, prompting the cardinal to decide she must make her own move soon. Back in the present, Evan wonders why the mansion was abandoned, while Alan realizes the guildmaster must have run into serious trouble. Evan is thrilled to discover that the mansion is packed with rare treasures and valuable potions left behind. The Marquis gives a creepy grin and orders his knight to loot every single coin, declaring that wealth is the ultimate justice. Soon after, Seorang eagerly reunites with Alan, clinging tightly to him as they travel through the desert toward the colony's ancient ruins. Hoping to comfort her after her guild's recent betrayal, Alan is caught off guard when she hands him a mysterious document to sign. His eyes widen in complete shock when he realizes the document is actually a marriage certificate, with his signature already requested at the top. Deep in the Ashudalan territory, Duke Kamalin receives word that the elite agents assassin group has completely vanished, leaving him without his most reliable tools to execute his plans. To make matters worse, the sudden and unexpected growth of the Cal faction has severely disrupted his plans to acquire abyssal entities through the criminal underworld of Asteria. Unwilling to tolerate failure in his ranks, the cold-hearted Duke instantly executes his apologizing subordinate in a brutal display of dark power. He immediately hands the responsibility of their entire operation over to his assistant, Inzella. Meanwhile, the Duke's unstable relative, Carmine, remains locked in the isolation ward, screaming in agony after absorbing volatile abyssal gems that trigger violent, uncontrollable urges. The Duke looks down at his thrashing family member with clear disappointment, noting that only those with exceptional strength can hope to withstand such a dark entity. Fortunately, he still has a successful experiment waiting in the wings to carry out his dark designs. A few weeks prior, the powerful fighter Kalman had met with the Duke to warn him about the Count's movement. He promised to deal with the meddling noble personally. Now that Kalman has been defeated, the Duke realizes the young Count is a far more dangerous threat and a stronger variable than he initially anticipated. Desperate to shake Alan's reputation, the Duke orders his agents to spread negative rumors and cause division among the kingdom's aristocracy, aiming to exploit any cracks. Meanwhile, the hyperactive Seorang continues to aggressively push her marriage plans, cornering Alan with a signed certificate he desperately wants to reject. Fearing their relationship will get completely twisted, our guide desperately tries to negotiate, suggesting they revisit the topic in 2 years when she is fully grown. The Beastkin cheerfully agrees, leaving the relieved noble to pat her head, hoping she will eventually change her mind. Leaving his companions to wait outside the entrance, Alan heads deep into the ancient ruins to explore the mysterious central tower. Inside the dusty chamber, a spectral draconian spirit suddenly manifests, taking the young mage completely by surprise. The ancient spirit is impressed that a human can see her, noting that his magical rank must have risen after his victories over the outer gods. While she admits she fully expected him to fail, Alan replies that he barely survived the encounters. The spirit is stunned when Alan mentions utilizing self-expression, asking if he truly understands the concepts of conceptualization. Convinced he is boasting, the spirit challenges him to prove his claim, promising to address him as master if he succeeds. Eager to shut down her mocking attitude, Alan begins to channel a miniature version of his signature spell. He manifests the conceptual ice halberd, leaving the spirit completely speechless. With the spell successfully cast, Alan demands she keep her promise, while the embarrassed spirit calls him a cheap liar. When she asks how he managed to pull it off, Alan explains he simply memorized the names of principles and expressed them directly. The spirit explains that true magic requires twisting established laws to manifest one's thoughts, a process that normally demands deep conceptual training. Alan realizes their perspectives are completely inverted. While mages typically must understand magic before casting it, he learned through trial and error. The spirit is absolutely horrified to learn he self-taught himself all these high-level techniques without any formal guidance. Since her projection is fading, the spirit instructs him to locate Sparrow's wand, which contains the mind of an ancient mage who needs a successor. Promising to wait for his return, the ancient draconian vanishes into thin air. Realizing the magical wand is stored inside Colony's royal treasury, our protagonist determines he must register as a combatant in the Colosseum to win the artifact. Soon after arriving in the crowded city, Alan notices the streets are filled with holy knights carrying the symbol of Rosario. Seolrang pulls the noble toward a noisy crowd, only for them to find themselves standing face to face with a familiar white-haired girl who calls out to her teacher. Alan instantly recognizes those familiar red eyes. He is left completely speechless as his fanatical disciple gently takes his hands in the middle of the crowded street. Walking down the street, Alan is suddenly stopped when a young woman with familiar crimson eyes reaches out and grabs his hands. He stares in disbelief as he recognizes Yuchia, the future Sin of Wrath, standing right in front of him. Although he only remembers her terrifying final game appearance, Utia offers him a warm smile and asks him to address her as Cardinal. The title immediately throws the reincarnated noble off, as he has no idea how she attained such a high rank. Hoping to avoid the growing crowd, Utia suggests finding a private place, and Seolrang eagerly leads them all back to the guild house. During the ride, Alan quietly asks his knight about the authority of a cardinal, only to learn they sit directly below the Pope and can authorize crusades. While his knight panics over the sudden arrival of such a powerful figure, our guy remains calm, pleased that his web of connections is growing. Once they arrive inside the guild parlor, the energetic beastkin wastes no time claiming the seat directly next to her benefactor. Alan asks Utia about her trip to the colony, prompting her to happily report in person that she has successfully risen to the rank of cardinal. Stunned by her gentle demeanor, he praises her growth, finding it hard to believe she is destined to become a harbinger of destruction. Seeing her behave so normally makes him feel proud of how well she has grown up under his distant guidance. However, Seolrang instantly becomes suspicious and accuses the girl of coming just to see Alan, which the cardinal coldly shuts down. To keep the peace, our hero expresses hope that the two girls are getting along, forcing Utia to pull the beastkin into a tight, menacing hug. The beastkin can do nothing but sweat in terror under the cardinal's overwhelming aura. Trying to change the subject, Seolrang loudly claims that Alan promised to consider marrying her in 2 years, causing Utia's expression to drop. As Alan tries to stutter out a correction, the smug beastkin gloats, thinking she has won the husband she always wanted. But the clever cardinal quickly deduces that their master was simply telling a white lie to appease a childish, demanding request. She turns to Seolrang with a cold smile, firmly declaring that she is still far too young to ever think about marriage. Furious, the beastkin retorts that the cardinal is the one who is too old, revealing that another child estimated her age to be over 1,000. This insult completely shatters Utia's patience, unleashing a spike of mana that causes the entire room's floor to cave in. After the dust settles, the cardinal regains her composure and politely announces she must leave for the royal palace. Before departing, she offers to secure a skull-topped wand from the royal treasury for him, promising to meet him again soon. The next day, the beastkin easily helps the noble register at the Colosseum, earning him an official entry-level fighter card. 2 days later, Alan enters a massive battle royale, where defeating every opponent at once will promote him straight to D rank. As the match begins, he realizes the other fighters are targeting him together, forcing him to adjust his magic for multiple targets. He focuses his mana to cast a wide era spell that can knock out all the low-ranking challengers in a single blow. Chanting his restrictions, the young noble unleashes his composite magic, letting loose a freezing blizzard across the arena floor. Through precise compression and enhancement, the spell manifests a colossal dome of solid ice that swallows the entire battlefield. The extreme cold creates a vacuum, instantly freezing the air and shattering the battlefield with terrifying force. The charging competitors are frozen solid in an instant, left completely helpless inside the massive glacier. The stunned referee quickly announces Alan Palacio as the sole survivor and victor of the match. The crowd erupts in cheers as the announcement echoes throughout the Colosseum. But behind the scenes, our guy is completely exhausted, realizing that maximizing the spell's radius has drained all of his mana. As he catches his breath, Evan approaches to congratulate him and presents a gift box that was delivered by Utia. Inside the case lies the skull-headed wand he wanted, leaving him amazed at how quickly the cardinal bypassed palace security to get it. The following morning, a fully recovered Alan decides to test the artifact by pouring his own mana into the skull. To his surprise, the skull opens its eyes and speaks, demanding to know who woke it from its deep slumber. When the noble asks the spirit for the chance to use its magic, the ancient mage rudely refuses and tells him to go away. Their bickering is interrupted by Evan, who brings a formal challenge from an A-rank combatant named Filcian. Realizing this is the perfect chance to reach the top rank instantly, our guy turns back to the wand and proposes a bet. Intrigued by the noble's confidence, the ancient spirit agrees to the bet, hoping it will finally stave off his boredom. To test the dangerous lightning magic he was taught, the young lord proposes a bet to the ancient spirit. Sparrow greedily accepts, eager for some high-stakes entertainment. The very next day, the Colosseum host raises his voice to announce a highly anticipated match. An experienced rank warrior named Filcian has stepped forward to challenge the rookie noble, hoping to exploit the rumors surrounding the count. The challenger believes this is a rare opportunity to skyrocket his own fame. By defeating the legendary count, he expects to secure a prestigious vacancy among the colony's top fighters. Knowing that the count's specialty is ice, Filcian relies on his own innate flame manipulation as a member of the Flame Beast tribe. He plans to strike before any slow magical chance can be completed, confident his fire will melt the ice. As the battle begins, the arena announcer screams that ice stands no chance against its polar opposite. But our hero has no intention of using ice, beginning a complex lightning chant instead. The challenger notices the shift but assumes a non-specialty spell will lack any real power. Hoping to end the duel in a single strike, the warrior leaps forward with his blades drawn. However, the lightning magic is already complete. The energy surges around the young lord's hand as he activates the forbidden spell, ready to rewrite the rules of the match. Alan invokes the highly dangerous Thunder God form. Before his opponent can even register what is happening, the young lord's physical body completely dissolves into blinding electricity. Transforming into a bolt of lightning, our guy moves at blinding speed across the sandy arena floor. The devastating strike connects instantly, bypassing the challenger's guard and sending the warrior crashing down in a heap. As the smoke clears, the challenger lies completely defeated on the ground, unable to move. The stunned announcer immediately raises his megaphone to declare Count Palacio the undisputed winner of the match. Walking back to his chambers, our boy shudders with a cold sweat, realizing he was close to dying. The spell was far more dangerous than he ever anticipated. The Thunder God form works by temporarily substituting the caster's flesh and bone with high-voltage mana. Because it acts as a direct enchantment on the physical self, even the slightest deviation during the chant will tear the user apart. If Alan had not possessed the extraordinary natural talent to reconstruct complex mana arrays on the fly, his body would have exploded. He would have been dismantled at a molecular level in a flash. Even though the duel is over, the irregular mana continues to destabilize his physical form. He is forced to remain perfectly still to reconstruct his cells, enduring agonizing pain with every passing second. Thankfully, Seolrang rushes in with high-grade recovery potions to soothe his aching body. The beastkin is left completely amazed by his power, while Alan silently curses the ancient spirit for teaching him such a lethal technique. The following morning, they take a carriage to the royal castle of Colony. Thanks to his companion's immense influence as a Baba Yaga, the palace guards grant them immediate entry to the inner treasury. While they walk the corridors, the ancient mage inside the wand uses telepathy to nag the young lord. He repeatedly begs our boy to sign a disciple contract and become his formal magic successor. But the count refuses to rush into a binding deal without consulting other spirits first. He deflects the request by claiming he is simply too foolish to inherit such high-level magic, causing the ancient spirit to scream in pure frustration. Instructing his loyal knight to wait outside, the young lord enters the grand throne room. He is formally announced to the king, preparing himself to ask for permission to browse the royal vault. King Carmaxes III welcomes the young noble, praising the magnificent display of magic he witnessed in the arena. The monarch gladly grants him permission to take a single treasure from the vault, fulfilling the kingdom's tradition. The king then casually offers his own daughter's hand in marriage as an extra reward. The unexpected proposal leaves the young noble completely bewildered as he tries to process the bizarre offer. Before he can answer, the king instructs his guard to lead the noble to the vault. The guide reiterates that he may choose only one item from the collection. Guided into the treasury, the young lord walks past rows of priceless weapons and gold. He ignores the glittering armor, searching the dusty shelves for a specific unremarkable relic that others would overlook. He finally locates the contract token of the Blind One. To any ordinary collector, this vital game artifact would look like a simple, worthless ornament. With the token secured, our guy heads back to meet Seolrang, but he immediately senses a tense, highly awkward atmosphere lingering in the palace hall. The king quickly dismisses the pair, laughing off his earlier marriage proposal as nothing more than a joke. The sudden shift in tone leaves the young lord utterly confused. Once they are outside, the beastkin explains that her high status allows her to ignore royal etiquette completely. The young lord accepts the explanation, though he still suspects something strange happened while he was gone. Back in the throne room, the king shudders in relief. He recalls how the beastkin's cheerful smile instantly turned into a treasonous bloodlust when the marriage proposal was made, silently warning him to back off. Just as he recovers his composure, a guard announces the arrival of Cardinal Utia. The fanatical girl steps into the hall, completely lacking the polite smile she usually wears in public. With an icy expression, the young cardinal requests a private audience. She is eager to query the king about a troubling rumor she recently uncovered.